Hogwarts, The Return of Turmoil. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 401, The Child Counting Money. Maureen was still happily accepting the Muggle banknotes that were given to him. Most people just stuffed some money on him and left, and Maureen didn't even have the chance to refuse. However, Alton pulled Maureen's hat and dragged him forward, not letting him take the banknotes. Let's quickly remove this spell. Alton looked at the banknotes in Maureen's hand, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. He didn't know what to do with so many Muggle banknotes. Professor Adams has taught us Muggle currency. Maureen secretly flicked the messy banknotes and coins, and the banknotes were automatically sorted. Then he used magic to figure out the amount of the banknotes, a total of £538.92. What's the point of taking so many Muggle banknotes? You can't spend them. Alton glanced at the Muggles dancing around him, and then continued, "Throw these banknotes into the trash can. Throw the banknotes into the trash can." Maureen thought about it and felt that it was a bit wasteful. This is the Christmas gift I earned after all. It was given to you by others, Alton said unhappily. They walked around a bearded man who was clumsily dancing ballet on tiptoe and turned into a small alley. Alton dumped the large stack of banknotes in his hand into the trash can. "Then I'll keep some as souvenirs." Maureen kept one banknote of each denomination and dumped the rest into the trash can. They were probably the ones who treated money like dirt. Maureen looked at the trash can filled with banknotes, thought for a moment and asked again, "Grandpa, isn't it a bit bad for us to throw away the money they gave us?" "Oh, of course not. After the dancing curse is resolved, we will return the money to them. That's more appropriate." Alton tapped the trash can, and the banknotes in the trash can were covered with a layer of magic. He cast a return spell on the banknotes, and these Muggle banknotes would fly back to their respective owners' pockets at night. Otherwise, it would be too conspicuous to have a pile of banknotes flying around in broad daylight. Alton looked around and saw that there was no one around. He tapped a water pipe by the wall with his wand and muttered, "Trace the source." A white light sank into the metal water pipe, propping up a big bulge in the metal pipe. The bulge soon began to move and disappeared underground along the water pipe. Muggles always like to bury this pipe underground, Alton muttered, "but this spell will check where the water is abnormal and find the source of the water." Maureen was looking at the graffiti on the wall of the alley. There were all kinds of spray-painted words on it. Some were insults, some were small advertisements for applying for certificates, and some were just sprayed with some numbers. "Are we just waiting here?" Maureen asked. "Well, I'll know when I find the source of the town's tap water. I can just apper it there," Alton said. "Then can I walk around? I have nothing to do anyway," Maureen asked. "You'll probably have your hands full of Muggle money after a walk, so you'd better behave yourself." Alton rejected Maureen's request, and Professor Kane said, "You're too troublesome." Maureen touched his nose and muttered, "It's not as serious as Professor Kane said." The Muggles on the street were still dancing unaware of it. Maureen was standing next to the fire hydrant admiring the Muggles' charming dance. Everyone who saw them was dancing, but at this time, Maureen saw a person walking hurriedly along the street at the corner. If it were normal, Maureen would not care about this person, because this person was wearing a thick black cotton jacket, a scarf and a hat, just like a Muggle. From the appearance alone, he must be a Muggle. But among the Muggles dancing on the whole street, there was suddenly a person who was not dancing, which was very conspicuous. "Grandpa, there's a person over there." Maureen pointed to the supermarket across the street. "There are people everywhere here," Alton said. "No, I just saw that man didn't dance. Maybe he's the same as us, or maybe he's the dark wizard we were looking for." Maureen's eyes never left the supermarket. "He's about to go in." Alton looked in the direction Maureen was going, and the man who wrapped himself tightly just turned into the supermarket. He was surprised and said, "It's true. It must be him who did it. Let's go and see. You follow me and don't run around." The two of them hurriedly ran across the main road and ran into the supermarket. The large Santa Claus balloons blown up by the blower at the entrance of the supermarket were dancing happily with his ilk. They crawled under Santa Claus' arms and entered the supermarket. The supermarket was full of various special sale signs. When those customers were choosing products, they didn't forget to dance in front of the shelves, as if dance had completely merged with them. When Maureen and Alton walked in, A fat woman with a scallion in her hand and her hips came over to invite them to her house for Christmas. Others began to feel sorry for the grandfather and grandson, and stuffed some change to Maureen and Alton. "These muggles are too compassionate," Maureen muttered as he collected the bills. "It's really troublesome. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar." Alton simply took out his wand and cast a disillusionment spell on Maureen and himself. This disillusionment spell can ensure that muggles don't notice them, so as to avoid being entangled by muggles. "I didn't find that person." Maureen searched every row of shelves. There were dancing muggles everywhere, but the person just now was missing. It shouldn't be. If a muggle who can't dance walks into the supermarket, I'm afraid everyone will pity him and watch him. Alton cast a search spell, but didn't see any magical wizards hiding in the supermarket. "Will this guy apparate?" Maureen looked around. Alton cast another detection spell, then shook his head. "No, there is no trace of the apparition spell in the supermarket." They carefully avoided the crowd, walked past a beverage cabinet, and checked the warehouse and toilet behind the supermarket, but still did not find anyone. He actually ran away. Alton was a little annoyed. Maureen looked around with a large stack of Muggle banknotes. He always felt that something seemed wrong, but he couldn't tell what was wrong. He looked at the cereal cabinet. There were no people there. He thought he had made a mistake. At this time, a golden spell jumped out of a water pipe and fell into Alton's wand. "Let's go. I already know where the water plant is. Let's go to the water plant to check." Alton took Maureen and disappeared in the supermarket. After they left, Maureen glanced at the cereal cabinet just now and someone had already stood there. This person seemed to have appeared suddenly. He was wrapped tightly, wearing a mask and sunglasses, and a knitted hat, and his specific appearance could not be seen at all. But from his figure, it was clear that he was a man. "That kid is weird." The man was holding 2 bags of cereal, a large bottle of milk, and a red Muggle firecracker. He stood there in silence for a moment before walking towards the cashier. Chapter 402 The Origin of the Dancing Curse. Alton took Maureen to check the water plant. The Muggle water plant had many pipes, and the reservoirs were divided into several square openings, arranged in a staggered manner. To Maureen, this place was like a Muggle maze. While he was still wondering what the rows of pipes under the ground were, Alton had already jumped down, cast a light magic, stood on the water, and put his wand into the water to stir it twice. There is no trace of magic. "The source of the dancing curse is not here," Alton said. "That's really strange. Every Muggle household has to use tap water. It stands to reason that casting a spell under the water is the easiest way. If it's not here, where would it be?" Alton carefully used the spell to check every piece of cement floor in the water plant, but still couldn't find any source of the spell. "Can you think of other places that Muggles usually go, Maureen?" Alton stood up from the water, then waved his wand, and the water in the pool arched up to form steps, and Alton walked up along the water steps. "Grandpa, you asked the wrong person, didn't you?" Although Maureen knew some Muggle knowledge, this knowledge was far from enough to support him to think about this kind of question. "Forget it, let's go find Edmund. See if he has any gains." Alton pulled Maureen up, opened his pocket watch, and paraded to Edmund's side. Edmund had just walked out of the church. He also had some money in his hand, but it didn't seem to be as much as Alton and Maureen. After all, Alton and Maureen were a grandfather-grandson combination, and they had an advantage over Edmund in gaining sympathy. "Did you gain anything?" Alton asked. "No, everything in the church was normal, but just now several Muggles who were praying generously stuffed money into me, asking God to bless me. That enthusiasm was unstoppable." Edmund threw a large stack of banknotes into the trash can next to him in frustration. Alton cast a spell on the trash can again. "What about the mall? We haven't been to the mall yet, let's go and take a look now." Edmund also learned from Alton to cast an illusion spell on himself to avoid being given alms everywhere. The 3 of them walked along the street to the town's largest shopping mall. The Muggles on the street were still dancing tirelessly, and they didn't stop. Even the babies in the strollers were lying there twisting their bodies. They checked the entire mall as usual, but still found no trace of magic. "This guy is quite powerful. There are traces of dancing curses everywhere, but no other spells left," Edmund said. "If we can't break this spell, the news of the dancing town will soon spread, and it will be even harder to cover up." Alton sat on a chair at the entrance of the mall, frowning at the Muggles coming and going on the street, wondering where the problem was. Edmund asked, Should we go back to the Ministry of Magic to find other people to help? I'm afraid we can't do this alone. Before he finished speaking, there was a loud noise in the distance, which immediately attracted Maureen's attention. A firework bloomed in the sky not far away. Someone actually set off fireworks. Maureen saw the fireworks in the distance. What was going on with fireworks in broad daylight? Go and have a look. Alton immediately grabbed Maureen and apparated to the place where the fireworks were set off. The place where the fireworks were set off was in a substation. The substation was built on the hillside of a small hill, and there was a tall signal tower on the top of the hill. There were many iron poles standing in the substation, many wires winding around, and there were transformers used by Muggles to transmit current. The firework tube was on the concrete steps at the entrance of the substation. At this time, 2 Muggle staff members of the substation were shouting loudly, as if looking for the person who set off the fireworks. Which person set off fireworks here at the substation, looking for death? A bald man danced a cha-cha and cursed, "Don't you know that fire is prohibited here?" Another pockmarked young man who was dancing jazz danced and cursed beside the fireworks, "You run really fast, don't let me catch you." Alton quietly walked over and pointed his wand at them, "Legislance." The eyes of the 2 Muggles suddenly became distracted. Alton read their memories, and after a moment shook his head and said, "The fireworks seem to be set off by themselves. It's strange that they didn't see the person who set off the fireworks." Alton cast another detection spell, "Search for traces." The spell quickly extended and spread throughout the substation. Then he raised his head and looked at the highest signal tower on the top of the hill. Suddenly he found something and exclaimed, "The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar." "Alton, what's wrong?" Edmund asked hurriedly. "Come with me, Maureen, you wait downstairs." Alton had already apparated to the top of the signal tower more than 20 meters high, and Edmund followed closely behind. Maureen wanted to join in the fun, but Alton obviously didn't allow him to go over. He immediately fumbled in his pocket and took out a cloud-piercing arrow telescope. He bought this when he went to Diagon Alley the day before yesterday. Professor Kane used this to search at the stadium last time. It is said to have high-definition recognition and 360-degree all-round ability to cross obstacles without blind spots, so Maureen also bought one. He saw a red plastic man on the wire at the top of the tower. It was a lifelike toy. It was dancing all kinds of dances on the wires, and it would change into another shape from time to time. Every time it changed into a different shape, it would change a dance. Alton carefully cast a confinement spell with his wand, and then put the plastic man into a purple bag. Sizzle! The tower suddenly emitted a burst of electric sparks. The violent blue electric sparks were transmitted like waves, and spread along the wires down the mountain. Soon it spread throughout the town. The lights of the entire town suddenly flickered, and then slowly returned to normal. Maureen was surprised to find that the power station employee who had just been dancing and cursing not far away had stopped dancing. "Strange, why are my legs so sore?" The bald man touched his legs with a puzzled look on his face. He felt that he could hardly walk. "Your legs are sore too?" asked the pockmarked young man. "Yes, it feels like I have run hundreds of kilometers. Oh my god. These are the crocodile leather shoes I just bought yesterday. Why are they so damaged today? The bald man's leather shoes have been worn out." "You didn't buy fake shoes." "Oh no, my sneakers are all broken." When another employee was about to laugh, he found that his toes were exposed. "These Muggles have been dancing all day and rubbing their feet on the ground like devils. It would be strange if their shoes were not damaged." Chapter 403, Abnormality Under Normality. "This is really weird." Maureen looked at the 2 Muggles curiously. He then looked down the hill with a telescope and found that all the Muggles dancing on the street had returned to normal. Everyone seemed to have forgotten what they were doing just now, but everyone was rubbing their feet and hands on the spot. Some people even lost their shoes while dancing. An ambulance was coming over not far away. It seemed that several people who were dancing striptease in the snow were frozen to coma, and some old people could no longer stand up. Alton and Edmund had already jumped down from the electric tower and apparated to the side of the fireworks. "What's wrong?" "Grandpa, what is that plastic man?" Maureen asked as he ran over. "It's a cursed thing." Alton untied the purple bag, and the man inside was no longer dancing, as if the curse had been lifted. He said angrily, "I don't know who came up with the black magic. No wonder we haven't found the source of the evil curse just now. It turns out that this thing uses electricity to spread this spell. using electricity to spread the spell. Maureen couldn't help but admire, it's amazing. Maureen was not very familiar with things like electricity, but he knew that every Muggle household has electrical appliances. If this spell can be cast with the help of electricity, then it would be easy for everyone to be affected by the spell. They originally thought it was due to the tap water, but they found that electricity was missed. Yet, it's quite smart. By the way, if we hadn't happened to see the fireworks and rushed here, maybe we wouldn't have discovered this thing at this point. Alton frowned again. He touched his short beard and felt a little puzzled. Grandpa, are you saying that someone deliberately led us here? Maureen asked. That's right, I always feel that this is not a coincidence. Alton looked around, his eyes swept over the two staff members who were taking off their shoes. The suspicion of these two people should be ruled out. Then Alton looked at the Muggles sitting on the benches or on the ground on the streets of the town below the hillside, and he was puzzled. These Muggles danced all day and must be exhausted. Maybe it was a kid's prank? Now many teenagers are restless. Sorry, I'm not talking about you, Maureen, I mean the Muggles. Edmund guessed, it just happened to attract us here. It doesn't matter, Maureen is the same. Alton looked at the large open space in front of the substation, but then shook his head and said, however, this shouldn't be a kid's prank. The substation is a distance away from the town and is built on a hillside. If a child deliberately came here to set off fireworks, he would definitely be seen by those two Muggles. After coming here, Alton deliberately used a spell to search the entire substation. The substation is not big, with only a control room and a lounge, and 4 or 5 dormitories. Now it is Christmas Eve, and there is no one else in a kilometer except these two Muggles. Maureen looked around on the hill with a telescope. The hill was covered with low lawns, and a layer of white snow had fallen on it. There were no footprints in the snow. There were several large poplar trees in the distance, and the poplar trees were also covered with white snow. The branches were almost broken by the snow. Maureen felt something was wrong. He looked at one of the poplar trees again, but he felt nothing was wrong. He felt as if he had seen it wrong. His telescope could see through things. There was no anti-perspective magic on this hillside. He could even use the telescope to see more than 20 meters below the hillside. Everything was normal on the whole hillside. But it was too normal, which made him feel very abnormal. If things could be explained, he would not think too much, but the person who set off the fireworks was not found, which made sense. Alton and Maureen thought the same thing. They both thought that someone should have deliberately led them here. Maureen put down the telescope and asked, Grandpa, do you think it could be the person we saw on the street just now, the person who didn't dance like us and was not affected by the spell? Should he also be a wizard? Maybe he led us here. But we didn't find him. Alton felt that this matter was a bit strange. He just chased into the supermarket and searched for a long time but couldn't find the person. Who are you talking about? Edmund asked, puzzled. Alton told Edmund about the strange man he had just seen, but Edmund didn't seem to take it seriously. Maybe I saw it wrong, maybe he was just dancing some kind of walking dance or something. To be honest, tomorrow is Christmas, and we have to work overtime to deal with such a thing. I need to tell the higher-ups that they should give us overtime pay. Edmund complained for a while, and Alton handed the purple bag to Edmund. Edmund said, Thank you so much, Alton. Today's remuneration will be counted into your pension next month. Maybe I will try to get them to double your remuneration today. I have to go back to write a report. I really hope to catch that bastard who caused the trouble. Alton has retired, but the department is often short of staff, so they will invite Alton to help. Every time Alton is invited by Edmund and others to handle a case, he is paid, which is counted into the pension. The latest novels are first published on the 6th-9th book bar. It's okay, Edmund, you go back quickly. I'll take Maureen away later. Alton didn't really care about the remuneration. He had a large sum of money from his pension every month. Now there was only Maureen in school. Apart from spending money on Maureen, there was nothing else to do. Maureen basically didn't spend much money at school, so their family was not poor. Edmund had already apparated away. Alton took out a funnel glass bottle and waved it. The glass bottle disappeared in the air. I threw the forgetfulness potion into the water plant. The people in this town will soon forget what happened today. I have to study this electricity problem when I go back. There are actually wizards who use electricity to perform mischievous magic. Tisk tisk. Alton glanced at the ambulance in the town. He thought for a while and said, We have to help these Muggles. Some of them are probably having a heart attack. Alton paraded with Maureen to the street. After they left, the trunk of a poplar tree not far from the substation suddenly cracked, and a man squeezed out from it with great effort. It was the man in the supermarket just now. This kid, really weird, such sharp insight. The man was standing next to the poplar tree, holding the cereal he had just bought from the supermarket in his hand. He was staring at the place where Maureen and Alton disappeared, thinking, and after a moment he walked down the hillside. Chapter 404 Back to School Train. The holiday was still very enjoyable for Maureen. He followed Alton to deal with 3 Muggle incidents and saw many interesting dark magic items, interesting to him, but a nightmare for Muggles. After the holiday, he stepped on the train back to school. Unran was telling him excitedly how Muggles celebrated Christmas and what fun gifts they received. Then Maureen told him about her experience of running around with Alton during the winter vacation. And Rand suddenly felt that her Christmas was dull. It turns out that wizard Christmas is so interesting. And Rand said longingly, I want to experience it too. Next year you can choose to stay in school. Maureen thought for a while, and then said, or come to my house, if your parents agree. Maybe I will beg, but the hope is not great. You saw their expressions just now. And Rand smiled secretly. Maureen also laughed. Anran's parents always looked uneasy in front of the enthusiastic Alton. Just now at the train station, Alton asked the Brill couple if Muggles eat fried chicken hamburgers for every meal, because he and Maureen went to the Muggle McDonald's to eat fried chicken hamburgers during Christmas, and ketchup was their favorite food. The Brill couple looked at Alton and Maureen as if they were country bumpkins. When they heard the word ketchup, they didn't know how to answer. At this time, the train carriage was pushed open and a person appeared at the door. It was Professor Adams. Oh, sorry, I thought there was no one in this carriage. Professor Adams was struggling to hold a large handbag in his hand, and he was carrying a sports bag on his back. When he was about to look for an empty carriage, he found that it was Maureen and was relieved. It's you, Maureen, Anran. Professor Adams was familiar with him because not many students knew that he was a squib, and Maureen and Anran knew it. Hey, Professor, you can join us. Maureen threw the bag on the seat next to her onto the shelf. Is it okay? I mean, is it not bothering you? Professor Adams asked hesitantly. And Rand smiled and said, no, Professor. Professor Adams glanced at the corridor. Many carriages were empty after Christmas, but he thought that he would be bored alone, so he brought the big handbag in. I'm exhausted. I shouldn't have brought so many things, but some of them are for classes this semester, just some interesting Muggle electrical appliances. Professor Adams put the handbag on the ground, and the handbag made a heavy muffled sound, and then took off the sports backpack on his back. Professor, you can buy a handbag with a traceless extension spell, so it won't be too heavy to carry. Maureen suggested. You mean this? Professor Adams sat down, wiped his sweat, and then said awkwardly, I haven't been to a place like Diagon Alley for a long time. That place is not suitable for me. Maureen understood what Professor Adams was thinking. Diagon Alley is a magical world, not a good place for a squib. He took out his wand and said, maybe I can help, Professor. Although I cast a traceless extension spell on the backpack, it is not as delicate as the one sold in the store, but it can still be extended a little. You can cast a traceless extension spell. Professor Adams was a little surprised. Although he was a squib, he was born in a wizard family after all, and he knew some spells. Maureen is amazing, Professor. And Rand said beside him. Oh yeah, I forgot. Professor Kane mentioned to me that you got the second place in the Dumbledore Cup in November. Very good. Professor Adams thought for a moment, took the sports backpack and opened the zipper, then helped me expand this bag a little. I usually like to carry this bag. It would be best if it can be expanded. I'll take out the things first. Professor Adams took out the things in the bag one by one, a few books, a laptop, a tablet, a power bank. Professor, why are you still carrying a computer? And Ran asked in surprise. I thought this thing was useless in school. Professor Adams said with a smile, there is indeed no internet in school, but it doesn't prevent me from using it to read ebooks and so on. I downloaded a lot of learning materials on the computer. Professor Victor also likes to play Tetris with my tablet, so I downloaded a lot of games. What about electricity? Maureen asked. I heard that Muggles can't live without electricity. Professor Victor helped me with the electricity. He used magic to charge it. I told him about voltage and alternating current, and he immediately understood the degree to which the magic of electricity should be controlled. He charges the tablet every day. Professor Adams said. Amazing. Maureen couldn't help but admire. He also played games on Enron's mobile phone during the summer vacation, but because Hogwarts was isolated from the world, the mobile phone could not receive signals, let alone the internet. But he didn't expect that Professor Victor had learned the Muggle knowledge of voltage. Professor Adams took out a long and narrow paper box from his school bag and put it on the table. Maureen found that it was actually a wand. Professor, this wand. Maureen looked at the wand with some surprise. Oh, you mean this? Professor Adams glanced at his wand and smiled awkwardly. Strictly speaking, I'm not a squib. I also received an admission letter from Hogwarts that year, but, how should I put it? Maybe I don't have enough magic power. I can't even cast a small levitation spell. I'm almost like a squib. I didn't get a graduation certificate. I failed the Transfiguration class and the Charms class. I only got a completion certificate. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Professor Adams took out a completion certificate with 4 colors of Hogwarts' unique logo from his school bag. So that's it. Maureen suddenly realized that he had always thought that Professor Adams was a pure squib. If someone didn't have magic power in his body, he wouldn't receive an admission letter. Now it seems that he was wrong. Maureen had seen this kind of certificate before. He had many of them at home, including those of his grandparents and parents. But the difference was that the ones above were all graduation certificates, which were a little different from Professor Adams's. Actually, I envy you for being able to perform magic. I used to be very depressed. If it weren't for Principal McGonagall finding me, she's a good person, I never thought I would have the chance to be a professor at Hogwarts. Professor Adams smiled uneasily, then took out a small pipe from the bottom of his school bag. The pipe was very unique, with a smooth surface and some ancient patterns. It looked like it had been there for some time. Professor, I didn't know you still smoked. Maureen looked at the small pipe with interest. Oh, I don't smoke. This is an antique left to me by my parents before they died. I usually carry it with me. Professor Adams said. Can I see it? Maureen had never seen such a small pipe before. Professor Adams handed the pipe to Maureen. Maureen took the pipe and felt a faint warmth the moment he touched it. He took a closer look at the pattern on it and was slightly startled. Under the mouthpiece of the pipe, there was a pattern similar to a scale. This pattern was one of the 12 patterns that Maureen saw on the Dumbledore Cup last time. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelists. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 405 Adam's Family. Professor, what does this pattern mean? Maureen quickly pointed to the pattern under the cigarette holder to Professor Adams. Professor Adams took a look at the pattern and said, You are talking about this? I don't know either. I seem to remember my father said this pattern is the symbol of our family, the Adams family. Professor Adams said here, a little embarrassedly. In fact, our family is a very old wizard family, but now I am the only one left, and I am a squib. If you didn't ask me, I would have almost forgotten this symbol. I am afraid that many wizards have never heard of the Adams family. Now it has declined. The symbol of your family. Maureen was surprised. He was born into a pure-blood wizard family and had some understanding of some ancient wizard families. There are not many pure-blood wizard families left now, such as Potter, Weasley, Malfoy, Lestrange, Black family, and Dumbledore family who can summon phoenixes. These families have left outstanding deeds in the history of wizards. Even his own Walker family is a pure-blood wizard family, but he has never heard of the reputation of the Adams family. If this wizard family is very famous, it is impossible for someone like Maureen, who has nothing to do during the holidays and runs around with Alton, to get to know each other. However, many ancient wizard families have collapsed a long time ago due to poor management or some historical reasons. I am afraid that the Adams family is also the same. It is normal that Maureen has never heard of it. Maureen remembered what happened last summer vacation. Hugo and Enran went to summer camp and had a meal in the restaurant opened by Professor Adams, but then Lucas suddenly appeared and sucked the restaurant opened by Professor Adams into a big ball with a lock magnet. In that case, Professor Adams, have you? Maureen pointed her wand at a book on the table and turned it into the shape of a black cube. Have you also seen such a black box? Professor Adams looked at the black cube carefully. He pondered for a moment, then said in surprise, I seem to have some impression. When I was very young, let me think, my father seemed to have taken it out. I have seen this black box. Why do you suddenly ask this? Then what? Where is this box? Maureen asked. Professor Adams shook his head and said, I don't know. I haven't seen it since then, and I don't know where he put it. Did he say what it is? Maureen continued to ask. Professor Adams recalled for a moment, and said with a gloomy expression, I didn't mention it. He is a very powerful wizard. How should I put it? He said that when I become a qualified wizard in the future, he will give this thing to me to take care of, but you know, he is very disappointed in me. Maureen was shocked. He finally understood why Lucas went to Adams' restaurant to make trouble. I'm afraid that Professor Adams's father hid a black magic cube in Professor Adams' restaurant. He looked at Anran again, because Anran's identity was also very special, and she had some relationship with a black magic cube. The centaurs said that Anran's ancestors had some origins with the ancestors of the Forbidden Forest centaurs. It is estimated that Anran's ancestors gave the black magic cube to the centaurs for safekeeping. Does this mean that Professor Adams' eyes are the same as Anran and Sweet's? They will also glow in certain circumstances, such as after touching the black magic cube? Maureen looked at Professor Adams. Professor Adams' eyes were light gray, but they did not glow. It should be the same as Anran, who had never touched the black magic cube. Maureen said thoughtfully, it seems that Lucas went to your place during the summer vacation just to take away the black cube. Take away what? Professor Adams didn't quite understand. This black cube is very important. I don't know how to explain it. Now few people know what it means, even I don't know, but the wizard who destroyed your restaurant came for this. Maureen said. Professor Adams sounded a little shocked, but I never knew this. I haven't seen this black box for many years. What is its use? Maureen shook her head and said, I only know that this box is very dangerous. There are 12 in total, and Lucas is looking for them. Professor Adams became nervous. Does that mean my restaurant was destroyed that day because of this? My God, I didn't keep the things left by my father well. This is not your fault, Professor Adams. Maureen said, even a powerful being like the centaur can't protect the black cube. Lucas is difficult to deal with. He briefly talked about the centaur. The magic and combat power of the centaur were not lower than that of ordinary wizards, but Lucas and the old witch were still able to steal the black cube they were guarding, and Professor Adams was almost like a squid, so it was normal that he couldn't protect the black cube. Professor Adams couldn't close his mouth for a long time. I don't know about this. Professor Adams was uneasy. Because it was a squid, he didn't care about these things. When Maureen and Anran disappeared in the Forbidden Forest, he didn't go to the Forbidden Forest with other professors to find them, because he didn't know magic, and other professors didn't force him. If this is important, Professor Adams muttered to himself, my father didn't tell me about this. He was already very disappointed in me. Now I lost this. Professor Adams raised his head and asked anxiously, then how can we get it back? The latest novels are first published on the 6th-9th book bar. I don't know, Professor, I can't deal with Lucas at all. Maureen waved her wand, and the black cube turned back into a book. He is too powerful, and the old witch next to him is also very powerful. It is basically difficult to find them. Then we have to tell Principal McGonagall about this news and ask her to help. Professor Adams said solemnly. The principal already knows. I've been to the principal's office for tea. Maureen took Professor Adams's school bag and whispered the traceless extension charm. It's not so easy to expand a school bag. You need to pay attention to the range of the traceless extension charm and the material's bearing capacity. Ordinary cloth can't withstand the spell alone. But Morn and Arnold have learned about this. He knows how to use other spells to avoid this. It took about 10 minutes to expand the school bag to the size of a wardrobe. Okay, this is all I can do. Maureen cast a reduction charm on the school bag. This spell combined with the traceless extension charm can last for at least a year, and the spell will fade after a year. Thank you. Professor Adams was still thinking about the black cube. He looked very frustrated. Chapter 406 Genealogy Tree. Don't be like this, Professor Adams, there must be a way to stop this. Maureen helped Professor Adams put the big handbag into his school bag, so it would be much lighter and not too tiring to carry. I hope so. Professor Adams sighed. After learning that he had lost something important, he was in a bad mood. If only I could master magic, what a pity, Alice. Unran was curiously looking at Professor Adams's certificate of completion. She had never seen such a thing before. The certificate recorded the graduation results. When she saw Professor Adams's ALS and NEWT test results, she was very surprised. "Professor, your potions, herbology, astronomy, care of magical creatures, and history of magic are all excellent. So amazing!" Unran exclaimed. Maureen was also surprised. She could get excellent scores in the ordinary wizard level examination and the advanced wizard level examination. Many senior students might not be able to compare. "That's useless. I failed transfiguration, charms, and defense against the dark arts, which are courses that require magic." Professor Adams said sullenly, "Those things are the key. The magic cast by the wand is too frustrating. Even if I know so much, it's useless." Maureen didn't know how to comfort Professor Adams. Frustrating magic was probably a hurdle that Professor Adams couldn't get over. This was also the reason why Professor Adams chose to stay away from wizards and open a restaurant in the Muggle world. He took the pipe and decided to divert Professor Adams' attention, so he asked, "Professor, is there anything special about this pipe?" Professor Adams looked at the pipe, his face slightly improved, and said, "This pipe is a little special." "Light it up." Professor Adams took out a lighter from his pocket. He didn't know magic, and the school didn't have electric lights for lighting, so lighters were a must. Maureen could have lit it with a wave of the wand, but he thought it would be better to let Professor Adams do it himself. Professor Adams lit the lighter with a click and brought the flame of the lighter close to the pipe. There was nothing in the pipe's smoke cavity, but when the flame approached, it seemed as if some tobacco was stuffed into the smoke cavity. The tobacco emitted yellow flames, which were slightly rotating. Then a tender bud seemed to emerge from the flame. The tender bud began to take root and extend, and soon grew into a small blue sapling. The sapling was about 1 meter tall, and there were red fruits and flower buds the size of a fingernail on the branches above. "This is the genealogy tree of our family. The fruits represent men, and the flowers represent women." Professor Adams stretched out his finger and gently poked one of the fruits. The fruit immediately bloomed, and a majestic man formed by smoke slowly rotated in the fruit. He poked the flower bud connected to the fruit again, and the flower bud also bloomed, revealing a kind woman. "They are my parents." Professor Adams poked the fruit and a lonely fruit under the flower bud again. The fruit opened, and Professor Adams himself was there. "What a magical family tree!" Unran exclaimed. The fruits and flower buds on the family tree have become somewhat dim, except for Professor Adams' fruit, which looks full of vitality. It is obvious that Professor Adams is the only one left in the family. "Professor, have you ever thought about getting married? And making this family tree flourish?" Maureen asked. Professor Adams smiled awkwardly. "It depends on fate." "Maureen, does your family have a family tree too?" Unran curiously opened a few fruits and saw so many smoke figures hidden in the fruits and flowers, which she found very interesting. I really haven't noticed it. Maybe there are. I'll ask Grandpa when I have a chance." Maureen didn't care much about these things, and Alton didn't tell him. Maureen looked up along the trunk of the family tree. He wanted to see when Professor Adams' family started. The genealogy tree of Professor Adams' family has many branches. Each branch represents a male who has established a new family. For married women, only the name of the husband's family is recorded, and their descendants are no longer recorded, because the children born by the woman belong to the husband's family, not the Adams family. The branch where Professor Adams is located is on a very remote branch, but the main branches have stopped growing. It is obvious that the descendants have been cut off, and only Professor Adams' branch extends out. "Ramsden Gray Adams, is this the earliest ancestor of your family?" Maureen asked, looking at the fruit at the bottom of the trunk. "Yes." Professor Adams pointed at the fruit at the bottom. The whole tree was built in this fruit. Inside the fruit was a bearded old man, who was his ancestor. "Let me see, how many years should this be? 973 to 1080 AD. This old man lived a long time, almost catching up with Mr. Dumbledore." Maureen exclaimed. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Wizards generally live longer than Muggles, because they don't have diseases like cancer that Muggles have. They are only afraid of being cursed by some incurable curses, and the curses they are cursed with are linked to their lifespan. It is impossible for wizards to avoid being exposed to curses throughout their lives. They will always be cast with some curses more or less, and these curses will cause their bodies to deteriorate. "Yes," I remember that there was an ancestor in our family who lived to be 120 years old, maybe 400 or 500 years ago, but my parents were not so lucky. They died when I was very young," Professor Adams said regretfully. And Ren asked curiously, "I remember that the history of magic mentioned that Hogwarts was founded by 4 founders in 993 AD. Your family history is even older than Hogwarts." "Hogwarts was founded in 993, which means..." Maureen then remembered something. He remembered that among the 12 patterns, 4 were the logos of the school. The 4 founders of the school were older than the ancestors of Professor Adams, but not much older. They were wizards of the same era. Could it be that Ramsden had some relationship with Gryffindor, Slytherin and the other 4? Maureen thought of the 12 black cubes. The 12 patterns represented the 12 black cubes. Did 12 people protect these black cubes together in the past? Maureen's eyes inadvertently glanced at the fruit at the bottom of the family tree. The fruit was sticking out of the pipe. There were 2 small things under the fruit. 2 moons were engraved. The 2 moons were separated, one on the left and one on the right. If they were put together, it would be a full moon. Maureen never expected to see the familiar 2 moons under Professor Adams's genealogy tree. He has been to this place several times. "This, Professor Adams, do you know what these 2 moons mean?" Maureen asked doubtfully. "Moon? I'm not sure, there are no detailed records, it's too long ago." Professor Adams shook his head and said, "So many years have passed, and I am the only one left in my generation, and a lot of information has not been left. How can it be so weird?" Maureen had a lot of unsolved questions in his mind. 12 Rubik's Cubes, 2 moons, what is Pangard planning? Chapter 407, Endless Aftertaste Curse. After returning from the Christmas holiday, many people were discussing what they saw and heard during the holiday. Hugo said that he went to Charlie's Dragon Farm during the holiday. He was very happy to announce that he had finally achieved his long-cherished wish, to become a dragon rider. "Yes, I rode on a dragon. It was so cool." Hugo happily told Maureen about the feeling of riding a dragon during the spell class. They were learning the taste spell in this class, using magic to make a glass of water taste good. Professor Flitwick asked them to start with sweetness, but not many people could succeed. "Really? I also want to ride a real flying dragon," Maureen said enviously. Dragons are often associated with warriors. Whether it is a dragon rider or a dragon slayer, it is something that many boys yearn for, and Maureen is no exception. "Don't listen to his nonsense, Maureen," Lily said unhappily beside her. He was riding on a dead dragon. The dragon had just been slaughtered and was being prepared for magical processing. "Shut up, Lily. A dead dragon is not a dragon anymore." Hugo snorted, "I'm also a dragon rider if I ride on a dead dragon." "A dead dragon rider," Lily corrected. "The name of the dead dragon knight is not bad." Hugo did not reject this title. He turned his head and asked, "Maureen, what about you? Did you encounter any fun things?" "Not bad. My grandfather took Ren and me to the weird park. I also went out with my grandfather to solve several cases. In one town, all the Muggles started dancing. Oh, and I ate ketchup. I found that the ketchup made by Muggles is delicious." Maureen said seriously, "I'll show you. It's unforgettable." He pointed his wand at the glass of water on the table, recalling the taste of ketchup in his mind. A ray of light sank into the clear water. The clear water slightly bulged with bubbles, but it was still transparent and clean. The taste bud spell would not change the color of the water. "Try it, the ketchup of Muggles is really delicious." Maureen couldn't wait to push the glass of water to Hugo. Hugo was surprised and said, "Do you think so too?" "I knew it. I'm not the only one who thinks Muggle ketchup is delicious." Lily laughed at me at first. Hugo seemed to have found a soulmate. He glanced at Lily proudly, then took a sip of water from Maureen's cup and licked his lips happily. Lily, like the Braille couple, looked at Maureen and Hugo with a look of country bumpkins. "You are so useless. Eating Muggle ketchup can make you so happy." Lily covered her face with disgust. She felt that she had nothing in common with Maureen and Hugo in this regard. "Did you say that Professor Adams came from an ancient wizard family?" Hugo asked in surprise. "Yes, their family is very old, almost as old as this school." Maureen nodded. "What's the big deal? Lily is the descendant of Ignitus, isn't she? The age is probably even older." Hugo tapped the water in the glass and said seriously, "It's delicious." "Ignitus. It's one of the 3 Peveril brothers, Ignitus, the owner of the invisibility cloak. Didn't I tell you?" Hugo tasted it carelessly, then frowned and spit it out. It was obviously not the taste he wanted. Oh, yes, I almost forgot, the symbol of the Deathly Hallows is also there. Maureen looked at the 12 patterns on the paper. The pattern of the Deathly Hallows, which was the symbol that Grindelwald used as his own mark, was also one of the 12 patterns. Lily, did your father tell you about these things? Maureen asked, about these Ignatist things. I'm not sure about this. Lily shook her head. To be honest, he doesn't know much about this. After all, it's just a legend and it's hard to study. Don't you Potters have a family tree like Professor Adams's? Maureen described the family tree to them. Hugo interrupted and said, how could it be possible? Uncle Harry was an orphan. Even if there was a family tree, it would be unlikely for him to stay. Voldemort destroyed his home. I heard that half of the house was blown up. It was too cruel. Thank you for reminding me of this, Hugo. Lily glared at Hugo. So Lily, your family may also be guarding the Black Cube or something, but you just don't know it. Maureen guessed. Lily waved her wand and pointed at her water cup, casting a taste bud spell on the water in the cup. She tasted it, frowned and spit it out, and then said, I will try to go back and ask around, but don't hold too much hope. In order to prevent us from getting into trouble, Dad confiscated the invisibility cloak from James at Christmas. Hugo said disapprovingly, the invisibility cloak is not a problem. There are so many invisibility cloaks on the market now. Yes, a powerful invisibility cloak costs 100 galleons each. I wonder if James and Albus can afford it. Lily pouted. The invisibility cloak is similar to the invisible cloak, but the spell will fade after a long time, and it is not as perfect as the invisible cloak. They are the dealers of the joke shop in the school every day, and they have a lot of money in their pockets. Hugo waved his wand again, and he vowed, this time I will make the water taste delicious maple syrup. Unforgettable. The latest novel is first published on the 6th-9th book bar. Hugo couldn't wait to drink a sip, and then sprayed it out directly, sticking out his tongue and his face turned purple. Damn, how can it taste like Hagrid's hot and sour soup? After Christmas, school life became busy again. Maureen didn't know where Lucas and the old witch were, and how many black cubes they found. He had no clues, so he could only stay in school honestly. In addition to Quidditch training, the most common thing he does every day is to spend time in the library, either looking up what the 12 patterns represent, or practicing after image in the book Across Arcane Time and Space. In February, he finally succeeded in performing after image. Although he could only see the scene 5 seconds ago and was disliked by Walker for a while, this was already a huge improvement from Maureen. He also has to try his best to avoid Magatha every day. Magatha is elusive and always follows Maureen in strange places. Sometimes she even skips classes and waits for him outside his classroom. Therefore, the relationship between Maureen and Magatha always makes headlines in the school's gossip news weekly. No matter where he goes, Maureen becomes the target of criticism, and he is very helpless. When the early spring sun begins to melt the winter snow, the Quidditch game has begun again. Yesterday was Saturday, Ravenclaw beat Slytherin badly, and today Poker reserved the Quidditch field, preparing to modify the tactics against Ravenclaw so as to deal with Ravenclaw next week. But when Maureen had just finished breakfast and was about to go to the Quidditch field, Sweet came over from nowhere and said something. Before Maureen could hear clearly, he was pulled away. What did you say you were going to do? Maureen looked at Sweet in confusion in an empty corridor outside the hall. Go find someone. Sweet said seriously. Chapter 408 Skipping Training. Who are you looking for? Maureen still had the broom in his hand, not quite understanding what Sweet wanted to say. Sweet didn't even wear his Quidditch uniform, and he looked a little uneasy. Do me a favor, I need to leave school, but I haven't learned how to operate yet, and I can't use magic outside of school. Sweet was still a minor, and if he used magic outside of school, he would definitely be discovered by the Ministry of Magic, but it would be different with Maureen. If Maureen was with him, this could be avoided. You know we're going to Quidditch training later, right? Maureen carried the broom on his shoulders. If we don't go, Poke will definitely kill us. Poke has been very irritable recently, because the Quidditch points of the 4 colleges are very close, and he requires that when facing Ravenclaw next week, he must win by at least 200 points against Ravenclaw. This is almost impossible. This year's Ravenclaw is too strong. They have a variety of tactics. Although Gryffindor beat Ravenclaw in the first half of the semester, it only won by 20 points. But before the Christmas holiday, Gryffindor tied with Hufflepuff, while Ravenclaw defeated Slytherin and Hufflepuff, so Ravenclaw is currently far ahead in points. I can't care so much. This matter is very important to me. Sweet said sullenly. How important is it? Maureen asked puzzledly. The last time Sweet came to him was because he had a big monster in his school bag, and this time he came to him to leave the school. Maureen thought to himself that he didn't seem to be the only one who often violated school rules. Sweet pursed his lips. It's very important. I must verify something. It has something to do with my mother. It has something to do with your mother. Maureen was slightly surprised. Sweet's mother had passed away for several years. He was already an orphan and was fostered in an orphanage. If Sweet wanted to do something related to his mother, Maureen felt that he could help. Do I have to go? Maureen asked. I have to go. I have to go and get this clear. Sweet said through gritted teeth, his face a little pale, and he didn't look like he was joking. But then Maureen thought again that Sweet was always a dull person and didn't know how to joke. Maureen glanced at the corner of the corridor and found that Pork and the others were dragging James and Albus away from the cafeteria. When Maureen was eating just now, he heard James say that he and Albus were going to skip training to go to Hogsmeade to buy goods, but the irritable Pork got the news from somewhere and had already caught them both back. Pork, a forced melon is not sweet. James shouted, you can get my body, but not my heart. Shut up. James, if you don't want me to cast a full body binding spell on you. Pork dragged James and Albus out of the castle. Maureen pulled his head back and said, well, you'd better pray that Pork doesn't find us. James and Albus have been captured. Even without him and Sweet, the training could go on. He hurried back to the dormitory building, put his broom back, picked up his wand, and walked to the corridor on the 7th floor. Logically, we shouldn't violate school rules, Maureen said helplessly. He has been very well behaved in the past 2 months. Professor Kane often comes to him with a smile and asks about his well-being. He reminds Maureen intentionally or unintentionally that it is a wonderful thing to watch the meteor shower with Professor Sinister in the astronomy tower. As a result, Maureen doesn't even dare to cross the line. Even he feels that he is too well behaved. That doesn't sound like what you should say. Sweet said sullenly. You're right. Maureen laughed. It doesn't matter. We can just go out for a walk. To hell with the school rules. They went to the room of requirement together. Maureen shouted at the empty picture frame of Arnak on the wall for 5 minutes before Arnak appeared in the picture with a big belly. What's wrong again? Little bastard. Arnak asked unhappily, wrapped in a bath towel. I'm taking a hot spring bath. Sorry, Arnak, but I need to leave school now. I'm going to go to hot spring with another classmate. I'm going to go to hot spring. Maureen was still thinking about what excuse to use. But Arnak had already jumped into the picture of the ladder to heaven impatiently. Hurry up, the hot spring water will be cold. Will the hot spring water in the picture be cold? Maureen muttered, but he thought it was better not to let Arnak hear his complaints, and then he and Sweet walked into the picture. Oh, this fool is going too. Arnak yawned. Yes, sir. Sweet was in awe of Arnak's tone. He was present when Arnak and Paingard fought, and he knew that Arnak was not a simple man. I usually don't take strangers there casually. Arnak looked at Sweet, and then said, but forget it, considering that you are with this silly boy, I think you won't do anything. Arnak grabbed Maureen and Sweet, and then took them directly to disappear in the painting and appeared in the living room of Arnak's house. Silly boy, I will pick you up at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. You are not allowed to come to see me today. Arnak glared at Maureen unhappily, then opened the door and ran out. Maureen walked to the bathroom in the living room, opened the bathroom door, and came to the outside of the painting. So where are we going? Maureen asked. The latest novels are first published on 69 Shuba. Sweet stretched out his wand and swiped it in his hand. A drop of blood was touched to the wand. He muttered a very difficult spell, and then the drop of blood floated in the air. This kind of magic is really blood-consuming. Maureen couldn't help but say. Sweet did the same thing when he fought with Ping last time. I don't use it very often. Sweet gently touched the drop of blood with his wand, and the blood immediately bloomed into blood mist. The blood mist gradually formed the appearance of a park. The park was lush with trees and muggles walked on the path. Peter's Town, you can approach to this park. Sweet said. Maureen touched his chin and said doubtfully, Peter's Town, this name is a bit familiar. That's a muggle town. You should be able to get there based on the appearance of this park, right? Sweet asked. Yes, I'll try to operate behind that tree, hoping not to run into muggles. Maureen grabbed Sweet and disappeared into the living room of Arnok's house. When they appeared, they had already appeared behind the tree in the park, but unfortunately, an old woman who was taking a walk was shocked to see Maureen and the two who suddenly appeared from the air, and she was so scared that she almost fell to the ground. Oh, sorry. Maureen was most worried about this kind of thing. He quickly raised his wand and pointed at the old woman. Oblivion is empty. The old woman's eyes became blurred. After Maureen processed the old woman's memory, he hurriedly ran out of the park. But when he and Sweet left the park and stood on the street, he suddenly understood where this place was. Huh? Isn't this the dancing town I came to during the Christmas vacation? Maureen said in surprise. Chapter 409 Familiar Town. You've been here during the holidays. Sweet looked at Maureen in confusion. Yes, all the muggles in this town were dancing at that time. To be honest, I got a lot of muggle money. The muggles at that time were so generous to me. Maureen still found it very interesting when he recalled what happened at that time. Of course, it would be even better if the muggles could give him galleons or silver sickles. They walked along the street together, and Maureen briefly told Sweet about a mischief magic that was cast on this town during the holidays. Sweet frowned slightly. Then why did you come here? Maureen asked again. They walked past a cafe, and in front of it was a clothing store. Two ladies dressed up in fancy clothes were laughing there. They were wearing very few clothes. Maureen was still thinking that the temperature was quite low now. Wouldn't they be cold wearing so little? But Sweet motioned Maureen to follow him, and then turned into a small alley. I used to live in this town with my mother for a while. Sweet walked to the back of a black car. He looked around to see that there was no one around, then took out his wand again, cut his finger, and took out a drop of blood. I really don't like your self-harming way of casting spells. Maureen leaned against the tree trunk and yawned boredly. Maybe you can try it. Maybe your ability can also be stimulated by your own blood. Sweet tapped the drop of blood and recited a strange spell again, and the drop of blood suddenly became very agitated. It's better not to. I don't think it will work. Maureen shook his head. It hurts to prick his hand every now and then. He looked at the drop of blood that was getting more and more violent, took 2 steps to the side, away from the drop of blood, and then asked, will this drop of blood not explode? I use it to find people. Sweet waved the wand again, and the drop of blood suddenly began to jump forward. Who? Lucas? Maureen asked in confusion. No, I just want to confirm one thing. Follow it. Sweet ran forward quickly, and Maureen followed him. He always felt that Sweet was a little strange. His expression seemed to be very urgent, eager to verify something. The drop of blood shuttled among the muggles, and cleverly avoided all the muggles to avoid hitting them. Those muggles seemed not to see the drop of blood, only Maureen and Sweet could see it. Sweet and Maureen followed a drop of blood through an abandoned hut. The drop of blood seemed to be searching for something. It circled around the abandoned hut and walked towards an intersection. The intersection was red at this time, and the drop of blood stopped on the zebra crossing. Hey, your drop of blood is amazing. It even knows how to wait for the traffic light. Maureen exclaimed. As soon as he finished speaking, the drop of blood suddenly crossed a road directly. It was not waiting for any traffic light just now, but just knowing the way. Sweet had already run into the traffic flow and followed a drop of blood. Maureen glanced at the traffic light and shouted, hey, it's a red light now. Professor Charles said last year that muggles have to wait for the green light to cross the road. Are you serious, Maureen? Sweet frowned and turned his head. Hurry up and catch up. Sweet turned to the side, and a white car almost hit him. A man with a face full of flesh stopped the car, rolled down the window, and cursed at Sweet. Sweet glanced at the man coldly. His hand was tightly holding the wand, which was hidden under his coat, ready to deal with emergencies at any time. His magic level was not bad, and it was unlikely that the car would hide him. Sweet ignored the driver and ran forward along the street. Maureen saw that Sweet had run far away, so he rushed into the traffic and ran across the zebra crossing at a red light. As a result, a car almost hit another car in order to avoid him. Maureen was quick-witted and secretly cast a rebound spell under his clothes. The 2 cars collided and bounced away like bumper cars, without any damage. Great. If Professor Charles knew about this, he would definitely be very disappointed with us too. Maureen saw that the drivers of the 2 cars were fine, and he didn't care about the Muggle pedestrians behind him who were screaming for help, and ran away quickly. He finally caught up with Sweet. After many twists and turns, the drop of blood came to children's playground, but soon disappeared in the crowd. Sweet didn't chase him again. He stood under a tree next to the playground, staring blankly at the children in the distance. "Where's your blood?" Maureen looked at the children's playground. Today was Sunday, and many Muggle children were playing in the sand and swinging there, but the drop of blood that Sweet had just made was gone. Sweet didn't answer. "Are you here to reminisce?" Maureen asked again. "I'm not that bored. The latest novels are first published on 69 Shuba." Sweet shook his head, walked to a bench, and then sat on it, looking at the little boys playing in the sandpit. His chest was slightly panting, and he didn't know whether it was because of running or other reasons. Maureen found that Sweet's expression seemed a little wrong. "Do you know those children?" Maureen asked curiously. Sweet didn't speak. His chest rose and fell more and more. He gradually clenched his fists and his eyes flickered. "What's wrong?" Maureen followed Sweet's gaze and found that Sweet had been staring at a very quiet little boy. The little boy was wearing a red cotton jacket. He looked about 7 or 8 years old, with black hair, fair skin, and a pair of long eyelashes. He was shoveling sand with a plastic shovel. "Who is he?" Maureen asked puzzledly. Sweet shook his head slightly. "Come on, I followed you across half of the town. Not only did I skip Quidditch practice, I'm probably going to be caught by the grumpy poker when I get back. I even ran a red light. Just think about how bad it is. You have to give me an explanation, right?" Maureen also sat down and asked. "I'm not sure." Sweet said, a little disappointed. "What are you sure about?" Maureen asked, puzzled. Sweet retracted his gaze, lowered his head, and said, "You told me last semester to check the whereabouts of the black cube, and I have been paying attention to this matter. Then I found something yesterday." Sweet took out a pendant from his clothes. The pendant was hung around his neck. The pendant was 2 fangs strung together, just like the pattern of Sweet's eyes. He said sullenly, "I didn't care much about this pendant before. It has always been hanging around my neck and I never take it off. My mother also won't let me take it off. But yesterday, I tried to use my ability on it." Sweet stared at the pendant in a daze and said, "It conveyed a message to me. This kind of message can only be known by special magic. No one understands this magic except me. It told me that I have a relative." "What?" Maureen looked at the quiet boy playing in the sands in surprise and asked, "You mean, that little boy is your brother?" "I don't know, but the drop of blood just now merged into his body." Sweet pursed his lips. "The blood curse I cast can only take effect on people with the same blood." Maureen suddenly thought of something and said, "Wait, does that mean your father?" Chapter 410 Nim. Sweet said that the black cube was a relic left by his father. He touched the black cube when he was a child, but his mother put it away later. Sweet never saw it again. But what if Sweet's mother gave the black cube to Sweet's father? "I don't know. My mother told me that he was dead." Sweet still looked at the quiet little boy. His expression changed. He seemed to be eager, hesitant, and even a little angry. What if his mother was lying to him? What if his father was really still alive? After a long silence, Maureen asked hesitantly, "Do you want to confirm it?" Sweet's breathing was loud, and his fists were clenched tightly, but then they slowly loosened. "What if it was you, Maureen?" Sweet asked. His voice became a little low, so low that Maureen felt that it was not like his tone. "If you're an orphan, living alone for so long, and one day you found that your father was still alive, and inexplicably you had a younger brother." Sweet stopped talking here, and his tone even became very irritable. Maureen opened his mouth, and he suddenly felt very uncomfortable. For a while, neither of them spoke, just sitting on the bench in the park, looking at the little boy in the sandpit. It was a handsome child, who was ignorant of the world, concentrating on playing with sands in the corner alone, and he didn't even know that there might be a brother watching him more than 10 meters away. Maybe they have some difficulties. Maureen broke the silence. Sweet pursed his lips. He pursed his lips into a thin line. His face looked very pale. "Will you forgive?" Sweet asked. "I don't know." Maureen didn't want to think about this situation. He felt that he would not handle it better than Sweet. Usually, in order not to worry his grandfather Alton, he would hide some of his complaints about his parents, but that didn't mean he had no emotions. The two fell into silence again. They were still looking at the little boy. The little boy was concentrating on shoveling sand into his plastic bucket. A child in black clothes ran over and pushed him rudely, knocking him to the ground and snatching his tools. "That's mine," the little boy said timidly. "It's mine now." The boy in black clothes said proudly. You already snatched one of my buckets yesterday. The little boy said anxiously. All your tools must belong to me. The boy in black clothes said rudely. Sweet suddenly stood up and strode towards the boy in black clothes. Maureen didn't follow him. He just sat there and looked at Sweet. Sweet snatched the bucket from the boy in black. He was much taller than the boy in black and his face was very cold, tried to steal his things again. Sweet's expression was always cold, so cold that it was even scary. Perhaps because he was an orphan since childhood, he rarely smiled, and never smiled at school. He looked like he was keeping people away. When Sweet stood opposite the boy in black was immediately frightened and ran away without saying a word. Take it. Sweet rudely stuffed the plastic bucket to the boy who fell to the ground, and walked back to Maureen without saying a word to him. He sat next to Maureen again, and as if to explain something, he said reluctantly, I hate people stealing things. At the end, Sweet added, even if it was someone else, I would help. He seemed eager to let Maureen understand that he was just seeing injustice, not because the boy whose tools were taken away might be his brother. I didn't say anything. Maureen shrugged. Sweet fell silent again, but the little boy suddenly ran towards Sweet with a plastic bucket, and stopped in front of Sweet. Thank you. The little boy showed a row of neat and bright teeth, and he looked very nervous. My name is Nim Floyd. Floyd. Sweet frowned. Yes, that's my last name. Nim smiled, his smile was timid. Sweet snorted, he stood up, turned around and left. Can I know your name? I want to thank you. Nim shouted to Sweet from behind. But Sweet didn't want to turn back at all. The latest novels are first published on the 6th-9th book bar. Maureen thought for a while and said, we are just passing by. Goodbye, Nim. Without waiting for Nim to speak, he stood up, followed Sweet's steps, and left this place. They stopped by a banyan tree, and Sweet was leaning against it. From here, he could still see Nim, who had already run back to play with his sand. Floyd, what a good name, Sweet said coldly. Sweet's last name was Clive, but the boy's last name was Floyd. Maybe we should go and confirm it, Maureen suggested. If Lucas is looking for the black cube, then Nim's father, maybe your father. Maureen stopped here and said, you know what I want to say. Although Maureen didn't finish his words, even Sweet couldn't avoid this question. Lucas was a very dangerous person. Once he found this place, things would not be optimistic. He felt that it was necessary to clarify the matter first. If Sweet's father was really here, he should go over and remind him. Sweet didn't say anything, but Maureen understood that he also wanted to confirm this matter. They sat there watching Nim for half an hour, and then a black-haired lady walked towards Nim. Nim looked very happy, holding a plastic bucket and a shovel and talking to the lady. That should be Nim's mother, said Maureen. Sweet snorted contemptuously. Maureen got up and followed Nim and the others, and Sweet also walked without saying a word. They left the children's playground and walked to the side of the road, where there was a blue car. Nim sat in the back seat, and Mrs. Floyd opened the door of the cab and drove away. Maureen took advantage of the fact that no one was around and secretly used his wand to cast a magic mark in the distance. The magic mark flew to the rear hood of the car. We will know where his home is later, said Maureen. It was impossible for them to catch up with the car on foot, and the town was not very big. Maureen only needed to rely on this magic mark to operate over. Sweet did not speak, but just stared coldly at the back of the car going away. Chapter 411 The Magic House in the Town. This is a warm house. It looks brand new, as if it has just been renovated. The white paint on the outside of the house shines brightly in the sun. The grass in the yard is neatly trimmed. There is a thick sycamore tree with a swing hanging on its branches. The blue car is parked in the garage. Mrs. Floyd has just walked into the house with him. Maureen and West are standing on the opposite side of the road, looking at the house. The atmosphere is a little quiet. It's a beautiful house, Sweet said coldly. The muscles on his face were completely tense, and he felt irritated for no reason. Maureen knew what Sweet was thinking, but he didn't say it out loud. He took out his wand and whispered a detection spell to the house. No trace of magic. Maureen frowned. Not even some protective magic? Sweet asked. It may be a problem with my detection spell. If the other party's magic is very advanced, my detection spell will not work. Maureen said, but what is certain is that there is no one else in this house except the two of them. You said last time that you would feel something was wrong when you approached the black magic cube, right? Sweet asked. Only at dusk, and, Maureen shook his head, that place is too dangerous. If you are unlucky, you may not be able to come back. Both of them carried the fire given by the centaurs in their pockets. This fire could ensure that everything was normal for them. Maureen did not want to run to that ghost place casually. Do you want to go over? Maureen asked. Sweet stared at the art and remained silent. Then I'll go over and take a look. If you can see any photos, you should remember what your father looked like, right? Maureen asked. Sweet shook his head. I don't remember. He left when I was very young. No photos were left. Maureen asked. No. Sweet said. Maureen felt that things were a bit troublesome. If Sweet didn't remember what his father looked like, how could he be sure that the man in this house was Sweet's father? Anyway, I'll go see what Nim's father looks like. Maureen glanced at the pedestrians around him, then quietly ran into the yard of the house, went around to the back of the yard, stepped carefully onto the stairs, and looked at the house through the glass outside the corridor of the house. Nim was sitting on the sofa watching TV at this time, and his mother went to the second floor with a pile of clothes. Maureen walked around for a while and found some photos hanging on the wall of the stairs, but because they were hung too far away, Maureen couldn't see clearly. Photos fly over. Maureen whispered a spell. The photos on the wall didn't move at all. Maureen was slightly surprised, and he immediately realized that this house was not simple. Muggles could not block his flying spell. Only some wizards with advanced means could cast an anti-flying spell to prevent everything from being summoned by other foreign wizards, except the owner of the house. Maureen's house was cast with a spell by Alton. This anti-flying spell can prevent things from being stolen. Except for Alton and Maureen, the flying spells of other wizards are ineffective. Nim, change your clothes, I want to wash them, hurry up. Mrs. Floyd walked down the stairs. Maureen hurriedly left the window, stepped out of the yard, and ran towards Sweet. What's wrong? Sweet saw Maureen return empty-handed and didn't understand. Wizard family. Maureen simply said about the anti-flying spell, I can't be sure whether Mrs. Floyd is a wizard, but I can't enter that room. His detection spell just now didn't work on this house, which means that this house is protected by very powerful magic. If he broke in rashly, he might be attacked by some spell. Wizards always have their own way of protection, setting some warning spells for their houses. If you break in without accepting the invitation, you will be attacked by spells. Maureen was born in a wizard family, and he knew this very well. Alton had set up some very powerful spells at home, specially prepared for those uninvited thieves. Is there a wizard living here? Sweet clenched his fists. Maureen knew what Sweet was thinking. This house was protected by magic, and Sweet's blood curse fell on Nim, which at least showed that Nim's father or mother was very likely a wizard. Can't your blood curse be used to search for your father? If there is a blood relationship between you, that kind of magic should work, right? Maureen asked. It doesn't work. Sweet shook his head. I only found the little boy. Maybe your father won't be so easy to find. Maureen guessed. He glanced at the sky and said, should we go over and knock on the door? Maybe we can find an excuse, such as playing with Nim or something. We can knock on the door in a roundabout way. The latest novels are first published on the 6th-9th book bar. I won't go there. Sweet said coldly, you can go by yourself if you want. If you don't go, what excuse can I make? You just helped Nim get the toy back. Maureen said helplessly. I don't want to go. Sweet's tone was a little disgusted. He seemed to hate the house. Even though this was the first time he saw the house, he couldn't convince himself once he had a hurdle in his heart. Then we can only wait. If there is a male owner of this house, he will come back. Maureen said, then we will be able to confirm whether that person is your father. The two of them found a chair at the corner of the street and sat down. Sweet looked at the people coming and going on the street. His eyes flickered and he didn't know what he was thinking. Maureen yawned. He skipped training today and came out with Sweet. Needless to say, he would be scolded when he went back. He could imagine Poke's angry look. This feeling was not good. But after they came out, they couldn't do anything but wait here foolishly. Sweet was quite stubborn, and Maureen didn't know how to persuade him. Let's go back. Sweet suddenly said. You're not waiting for him. Maureen said in surprise. Sweet took a deep breath and shook his head. I'm not ready to see him. Maureen could understand Sweet's feelings. If it were anyone else, they would not be able to accept this quickly after learning that a relative who had died for many years was still alive in the world. Sweet was a person who had been abused by the sarcastic director in an orphanage. He went to the orphanage after losing his mother, and was beaten and abused. His life was very hard before. But he suddenly learned that he had a younger brother, and his father was still living a quiet and warm life with his younger brother, but he didn't care about him. Sweet couldn't let it go. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 412, The Master of the House. At least make sure. What if that person is not your father? There are many possibilities. Maureen said. For example, your father just fostered Nim in a wizard family or something, and your blood curse can't find your father. Maybe your father really has, but you have confirmed that you have a younger brother. Shouldn't you clarify the matter of your younger brother? Maureen asked. Sweet was silent for a moment, looked at the house in the distance again, and sat down again. I really hope there is no such thing as the black cube, so that it won't be so troublesome. Maureen looked up at the sky. The early spring sun was warm on his body. The leaves next to him were sprouting, and the sky was as blue as a mirror. He didn't know how many black cubes Lucas and the old witch had found, but since he had obtained one black cube now, he could breathe a sigh of relief. Even if Lucas and the old witch found the remaining black cubes, as long as there was one black cube with Maureen, maybe they could stop their plan. Maureen didn't feel guilty about leaving school, but he found himself a little bored in the Muggle world, because there were always Muggles walking around him from time to time, and he couldn't practice some magic to relieve his boredom. Sweet next to him was not a person who could relieve his boredom. After an hour, Sweet didn't say a word. Maureen could only put Doi on his hands and teach Doi to speak, which could also make this dull atmosphere a little more lively. You can say it with me, Doi, the weather is very good today. Maureen said. Doi tilted her head and curled her fluffy tail comfortably. Doi, great. You have to learn some new words so that we can communicate better. Maureen said patiently. Momo, stupid. Doi rolled happily in Maureen's hands. Her furry body was like a 4-ball, and her tail kept swinging. Forget this word. Maureen said unhappily. Doi went back into Maureen's pocket and took out a piece of candy from Maureen's pocket. It bit the candy wrapper skillfully and continued to say nonchalantly, Momo, stupid, Doi, great. I don't understand, where did you learn this? You just tell lies. Maureen snatched the candy from Doi's hand and stuffed it into his mouth. Doi cried twice in dissatisfaction, then went into Maureen's pocket to pick up the candy. Your pet is really weird. Sweet watched the candy in Maureen's hand disappear little by little, and continued, You mean other people can't see it? Yes, no one else can see it. Maureen stroked Doi's fur, but it helped me a lot. Then why can I see it? Sweet said. Huh? You can see Doi. Wait, you never said it. Maureen was surprised. You didn't ask me. Sweet turned his gaze back to the house. Maureen was speechless. He usually only talked about Doi with Hugo, but Hugo couldn't see Doi either. Sweet usually didn't talk to other students. He probably only talked to Maureen the most, but they never talked about Doi. That's strange, you can see it too. Maureen muttered. In addition to the Arnox and Maureen, Sweet was the fourth person who could see Doi. At this time, a white car drove over from the intersection in front of the street, stopped outside Nim's house, and honked again. The car door opened and a man got out of the car. This was a middle-aged man with black hair, wearing a suit, a coat on the outside, and a brown scarf. He was tall and thin. He opened the trunk and took out a brand new red basketball. Dad, you're back. Nim heard the sound of the car at home, opened the door excitedly, and ran towards the man. His childish voice reached Maureen and the others. The man smiled, picked up Nim, and turned around in the yard twice. It's a basketball. Great. Nim happily took the basketball, and his little face was filled with joy. Sweet gritted his teeth and stared at the man. Huh? Maureen looked at the man in surprise. He had never seen this man before, but he felt that this man was familiar. Then he suddenly remembered when he had seen this man. It's this man. Maureen was surprised. Do you know him? Sweet asked coldly. I can't say I know him, but I came to this town during the Christmas holiday. At that time, the whole town was cast by a wizard with a very powerful prank magic. Many Muggles were dancing, but he didn't. Maureen didn't see what the man looked like that day, but he remembered the man's figure and could barely recognize him. He briefly told Sweet about the matter. The latest novels are first published on 6th book bar. So he must be a wizard. Sweet kept his hands in his pockets, holding his wand in his pocket, and his voice was angry. It's hard to be sure if it's a wizard. If he hides well, even we can't recognize him. Maureen also looked at the man. The man carried Nim and walked towards home, but when he was about to reach the door, the man suddenly became alert. He put Nim down and motioned Nim to go home first, then walked along the corridor to the window, which was where Maureen had just gone. Then his face changed, turned around, and looked around on the street. But we can be sure now. Maureen frowned. He noticed that I had just been there. I thought you would not leave any traces when you cast magic. Sweet said. But I just used a flying spell, and I must have accidentally triggered a protective spell of the house. That kind of spell would remind him. Maureen said. The man looked a little nervous. He hurriedly opened his door and then closed it. After a while, he appeared by the window again and pulled the curtains. He is very alert. Maureen couldn't help but say. In fact, he usually wouldn't break into a wizard's house casually, because he knew that many wizard families had this kind of protective spell, but at first he didn't realize that this was also a wizard's house. You can't be sure if he is your father, right? Maureen asked. Sweet shook his head. His expression was a little uncertain. I feel that Nim's mother should be a Muggle, otherwise she would have noticed that I cast a flying spell on the photos in the house. Maureen gasped. Sweet had stood up and walked along the street towards the house, stopping under a tree opposite the house. But from here, nothing can be seen, because the man pulled the curtains, and they couldn't see what happened in the house. Maureen was thinking about one thing. The other party was still an adult wizard with a very high vigilance. For Maureen, dealing with a strange adult wizard was not a good thing, especially since he had just broken into someone's house. But he thought again that since Sweet could be sure that Nim was his brother, then this man should be Sweet's father in all likelihood, but he didn't know if Sweet could accept this. While he was still thinking, a voice suddenly came from behind them. Were you the one who tried to break into my house? Maureen and Sweet were slightly surprised and turned around quickly. Chapter 413 Floyd. When Maureen turned around, he had already grabbed the wand in his hand, but he did not move. Instead, he looked at the man in front of him warily. The man was Nim's father, Mr. Floyd. It's you. Floyd stared at Maureen in surprise. Maureen's hands were in his pockets all the time. He said in a deep voice, Do you know me? Floyd's hands were in his jacket pockets. Although Maureen did not see his pockets, he was sure that Floyd must have a wand in his hand at this time. What are you doing here? Floyd just looked at Maureen from beginning to end. He did not look at Sweet, and seemed to ignore Sweet, which made Maureen feel a little strange. Sweet on the side had a cold face and his eyes were wavering. Maureen said, I remember you. When I came here during the winter vacation, all the Muggles in the town were under the spell, but you were not. You are a wizard, right? This has nothing to do with you. Floyd said coldly. Maureen continued, It has nothing to do with me, but it has something to do with another person. Who? Floyd asked. Maureen glanced at Sweet on the left and said, It's him. Him. Floyd frowned. Who are you talking about? It's him. I think it's better for him to talk about it himself. Maureen gestured to Sweet. But Sweet still said nothing, and his eyes were full of disgust when he looked at Floyd. But Floyd became more alert. What are you talking about? Who else did you bring? Floyd glanced vigilantly on both sides. Who else has been here? The old man who came with you last time. Hey, wait, you didn't. Maureen felt a little strange. He looked at Sweet, then at Floyd, and felt that something was wrong. From the moment Floyd appeared until now, he seemed to have been looking at Maureen all the time, and had not noticed Sweet's existence at all. At this time, Nim suddenly ran over from across the street, holding the brand new basketball in his hand. Dad, why did you suddenly come here? Floyd's face changed slightly, and he hurriedly said, Nim, go back quickly. Don't come over here, but Nim had already shouted in surprise, Oh, it's you. You are the brother who helped me. Nim happily ran towards Sweet. He looked at Sweet innocently, and then said to Floyd, Dad, it's him. Tony just stole my bucket again, and it was this brother who helped me get the tools back. Nim pointed at Sweet and gave Sweet a bright and innocent smile. Sweet's eyes flickered for a moment, and suddenly turned around and left. Wait, I don't know your name, Nim shouted from behind. But Floyd grabbed Nim, his expression very serious. Nim, Who are you looking at? There's no one there. What do you see? Floyd's other hand was still hidden in his pocket. Maureen noticed that a revealing spell came out of Floyd's pocket and flowed past him. Who are you? What did you do to my son? Floyd questioned the magic in a stern voice, and his attention was always observing the movements around him. What did you do? I didn't do anything. Maureen felt that the situation was very wrong, and he suddenly remembered something. Can't you see him? Wait, Sweet. Maureen hurriedly grabbed Sweet, who was about to leave. Floyd's face suddenly turned pale, and he shouted at Maureen, what were you talking about just now? Sweet? What Sweet? Where did you know this name? Maureen grabbed Sweet, and Sweet snorted coldly, standing there, not even bothering to turn around. Maureen had heard some clues from Floyd's tone, and he felt very strange. You can't see, this is really strange. Sweet, why can't he see you? Sweet said coldly, he is lying with his eyes open. But Floyd was like being struck by lightning. He looked at Maureen anxiously, and then asked, Sweet, you said Sweet is here, right? Floyd's expression changed from anxious to happy, and seemed to be very regretful. His eyes passed through Sweet, but it seemed that he was just looking at the air. This made Maureen even more confused. Even if those centaurs in the Forbidden Forest liked to lie to Maureen with their eyes open, at least they could see what Maureen looked like, but Floyd didn't seem to see Sweet at all. I don't understand. You can't see him? Maureen asked in confusion. Pendant. Floyd said quickly, is he wearing a special pendant? There are 2 fangs on it, let him take it off. Why? Maureen asked in surprise. Floyd looked at him, who was blinking curiously. He hesitated for a moment, and cast a sleeping spell with the wand in his pocket. Nim immediately fell into Floyd's arms and fell asleep. The latest novel is published on 69 Shuba. Floyd hugged Nim. His eyes were very complicated. Let him take off the pendant, please, so that I can see him. Why should I take off the pendant? Sweet said coldly. But Floyd didn't seem to hear what Sweet said. He didn't notice Sweet's existence at all. Maureen hesitated for a moment and said, Sweet, we are here to confirm the matter. Take off the pendant, it's no big deal, right? If he really can't see you because of the pendant. Sweet clenched his fist, and then took off the pendant without saying a word. The moment he took off the pendant, Floyd's eyes widened and he said in disbelief, Sweet, are you really Sweet? I don't know you. Sweet said coldly. I can prove that without this pendant. Floyd pulled out a magic wand from his pocket, pierced his palm, and a drop of blood floated up and then disappeared into Sweet's body. Maureen had seen this kind of magic before. Sweet had just found him in this way. You are really my son, Floyd said in a daze. Sweet's chest kept rising and falling. The moment the blood curse floated into his body, the feeling of blood connection made him understand who the man in front of him was. Sweet clenched his fists suddenly. Floyd let out a long sigh, with an ecstatic look on his face. Sweet, I'm sorry, I don't know how you've grown up. Is your mother Martina okay? Shut up. When Sweet heard the name Martina, he suddenly shouted angrily, you are not allowed to mention her name. Floyd's eyes dimmed slightly. I'm sorry, son, I'm not your son. Sweet continued to shout, you are not allowed to call me that. How dare you? You abandoned her, abandoned us, and then with that Muggle. How dare you call me that? The muscles on Sweet's face twitched with anger. Maureen had never seen Sweet get so angry. Although Sweet was usually aloof and indifferent to his classmates, he was at most serious and never got angry with anyone. At this time, Sweet seemed to have a volcano hidden in his heart, eager to erupt. He stood there and stared at Floyd, his eyes full of resentment. Chapter 414 Angry Man. Floyd looked at Sweet with complicated eyes, and listened quietly to Sweet yelling there. You are right to yell, I am indeed sorry for you, Floyd sighed softly. Just sorry. Sweet pulled out his wand suddenly. He walked in front of Floyd, and pointed the wand at Floyd's heart. Just sorry? In all these years, you only said sorry? You abandoned us, leaving my mother and I homeless. You were not here when we were in the most difficult time, and you did not come back when my mother was critically ill. Sweet, don't be impulsive. Maureen warned. Don't worry about it, Maureen. Sweet roared, his hand holding the wand kept shaking, and sparks even burst out from the tip of the wand. Floyd did not dodge, he did not even care that Sweet pointed his wand at his chest, he just felt bitter. You are right to hate me, I am indeed sorry for you, I have been looking for you these years, wanting to make it up to you, but, you are lying. Why would you think of coming to me? You have long forgotten that you have a son like me. You just got together with a Muggle woman and gave birth to a little bastard. He is your brother. You can't say that about him, Floyd shouted hastily. He's not my brother. Sweet said angrily, I can't forgive you, and Mom won't forgive you either. You don't know how we have been through all these years, right? After Mom died, I grew up in an orphanage, and was abused and beaten by a Muggle all day long, but what about him? You protected him and gave him a happy family. Why? Why can he live this kind of life, while I have to be looked down upon in the orphanage? Floyd listened to Sweet's words, his face becoming paler and paler. He looked shocked. I'm sorry, I didn't know your life was like this. Of course you didn't know. Because you would rather choose to be with a Muggle woman than to find us. You abandoned us. You can give him everything, buy him any gift. I have nothing, why can't I? The muscles on Sweet's face had been twitching. He looked at Nim angrily, at the newly bought basketball in Nim's hand, and suddenly snatched the basketball. Why can't I have this basketball? Why? Why can he get anything, but I have nothing? You never take me seriously, and now you want to say sorry to me. Sweet held the basketball tightly in his hand. Although he disdained to play Muggle basketball, he just couldn't stand it. No one knew what he was thinking in his heart and how many emotions he had. His arrogance and indifference in the past were all disguises. He was just a 13-year-old child who needed Nim's life, but he got nothing and could only be insulted and abused by the director in the orphanage. Even Maureen didn't know what kind of person Sweet was. It was the first time he saw that the usually indifferent and calm Sweet could become so crazy because of anger and unwillingness. Sweet held the basketball tightly, and even because of anger, he unconsciously squeezed the basketball with magic, making the basketball a little deformed. It was just a simple basketball, but to Sweet, it was more than just a basketball. Floyd seemed to be deflated. He lowered his voice and said in an almost pleading tone, Listen to my explanation, Sweet. I have been looking for you in the past few years, but you have that pendant. There is a very powerful blood curse on the pendant. Martina modified the blood curse so that the blood curse of the pendant is effective on me, so even if you stand in front of me, I can't see you. Martina doesn't want me to find you. My mother doesn't let you find me? Really? That's because my mother has been extremely disappointed in you for a long time. Because she knows what kind of person you are, a coward who abandons his wife and children. She will not forgive you. She doesn't want me to be influenced by an irresponsible bastard like you. Sweet put the wand back into his pocket, then picked up the pendant and looked at Floyd coldly. Mom is right. She doesn't want me to find you because she would rather I don't have you as a father. Sweet hung the pendant around his neck again. Wait, Sweet. Don't do this. Floyd lost track of Sweet all of a sudden, and he shouted anxiously, I can explain. Things are not what you think. Sweet. Give me a chance, let me make up for it. But Sweet didn't listen to what Floyd was begging. He had turned the corner and left here. The atmosphere became a little quiet, and the cars on the street drove by, raising a cloud of dust. Only Maureen and Floyd were left on the side of the road, and Nim was sleeping in Floyd's arms, unaware of all this. Please, help me persuade Sweet. You can see him. Floyd looked at Maureen pleadingly. He's gone. Maureen said hesitantly. Help me stop him. I need to explain it to him clearly, Floyd said. Maureen glanced at the place where Sweet disappeared, then shook his head and said, It's useless. Even if I take you to find him, he will definitely leave again. I have never seen him so angry. Floyd showed a bitter smile at the corner of his mouth. He sighed deeply, and the whole person seemed to have aged several years. The latest novels are published on the 69th book bar. I didn't expect him to hate me so much. If it were me, I would hate it too, Maureen said calmly. Floyd looked at Maureen. His face stagnated slightly, and then he said, You don't understand. Maybe I don't understand. Maureen's tone was also very cold, but everyone wants to have parents to accompany them to grow up. I am no exception, and he is no exception. Maureen's parents have not been home for 6 years, and they always write letters with various excuses to prevaricate. He understands why Sweet suddenly became so angry. Some emotions accumulate to a certain moment and will eventually burst out. Sweet usually makes himself cold, unsmiling, and keeps people at a distance, but that is just a way for him to protect himself. Maureen is also easygoing and seems to be nonchalant about everything, but Maureen does this just because he doesn't want to make Alton worry. Everyone has his own disguise. Who knows what kind of sadness is hidden in the heart of the person who often laughs heartlessly. If possible, Maureen also wants to ask his parents why they haven't been home for so many years. Is work really that important to them? Floyd hugged Nim tightly. He didn't know what Maureen was thinking, but he felt lost. He looked at Nim in his arms with pity, and then looked up at the empty street in a daze. Chapter 415 Blood Curse. Maureen didn't leave, he still had something to figure out. After a long while, Floyd spoke slowly. I thought you came with your grandfather. I remember you called the old man that. He's from the Ministry of Magic, and I didn't want to have anything to do with the Ministry of Magic. Maureen remembered something and frowned. I remember that it was you who set off fireworks at the power station last time to remind us that the spell that caused the Muggles to dance was on the power tower, right? Floyd nodded slightly and did not deny it. I could have handled this matter, but the people from the Ministry of Magic arrived immediately. I just don't want my life to be interrupted. I like to live the life of a Muggle. The Ministry of Magic doesn't know that there is a wizard like me in this town. After a while, he said earnestly, you are Sweet's classmate, right? Help me persuade him. I didn't find him before, but now I want to make up for it all. I don't understand, Maureen said. You said you had always wanted to look for Sweet, but you knew that Sweet would definitely receive an admission letter from Hogwarts, and you could have gone to Hogwarts to find him. Floyd's eyes flashed twice and he shook his head. I can't go to Hogwarts. Why? Sweet is in Hogwarts. If you really care about him, just tell the professor. It's not a difficult thing. Maureen said. It's not that simple. You are still too young. There are some things I can't explain to you. Floyd seemed to have something to hide, which made Maureen quite confused. Why couldn't Floyd go to Hogwarts? Hogwarts would not refuse any parent's visit. Parents were allowed to enter as long as they explained the reason. Floyd didn't seem to want to dwell on this issue too much. He asked, Sweet used the blood curse to find him, right? Yes, that's why we followed. Maureen didn't hide anything. Floyd must know more about the blood curse of the Clive family than he did. With a pendant, he can't find me. In the past few years, I have been waiting for him to use this magic to find him. Only in this way can I have the chance to find him, but I didn't expect him to. Floyd sighed slightly, and then he looked up at Maureen. You are Sweet's friend. You should have stayed in school. How did you get out? Do you have to ask this question? Maureen put his hands in his pockets and frowned. Sorry. Floyd smiled reluctantly. He probably thought about how Maureen and Sweet got out. There are always students who don't follow the rules, but he feels that he has no right to interfere in this matter. What's your name? Floyd asked. You can call me Maureen. Sweet and I share a dormitory. Maureen felt that there was nothing to hide. Maureen, can I invite you to my house? I want to know about Sweet. I haven't seen him for 10 years. I hope to fulfill some responsibility and get to know him. Floyd said. I don't know whether I should accept the invitation, Mr. Clive. Maureen shook his head. But you've put the cart before the horse. Sweet is somewhere here. If you want to know about him, you should go through him himself, not me. He has never mentioned anything about his father to me before. Floyd hugged him tightly, his face looking a little gloomy. You're right. Floyd nodded, but then sighed, but he won't give me a chance. This matter is very complicated and he won't understand. You adults always think that children can't understand, but you are never willing to try to explain it. Maureen was very uncomfortable with this. If you don't try, how do you know that children can't understand? Floyd looked at Maureen with complicated eyes. He was silent for a long time before he said, You are special. I'm not special. Maureen said calmly, I just have some similarities with Sweet. I don't mean that. Floyd looked at Maureen. He saw Maureen's two different colored eyes and said thoughtfully, You have sharp senses. The last time you came to this town, even your grandfather didn't find me, but you always seem to be aware of where I am standing. I'm just lucky. Maureen frowned, and I didn't really find you. I just felt that there was something strange somewhere. Luck can't explain this. Floyd said, I am very confident in my magic. If you know Sweet, you should know that he also knows some. This blood curse flows in our bodies. It is more powerful than ordinary magic and is generally not noticeable to people. Why did you notice me? At that time in the supermarket and the substation, he used the blood curse to hide himself. Maureen just felt that there seemed to be something discordant somewhere, but he couldn't say why, and he didn't investigate it. But Floyd noticed Maureen. Everyone has their own secrets. Maureen said calmly, You think we can't understand what you do, and I think you can't understand my secrets. If the other party is unwilling to make things clear, Maureen doesn't want to make it too clear. You know that you can't keep secrets in front of experienced wizards, right? Floyd said meaningfully. You can try. Maureen was very calm. Last time someone wanted to peek into his memory, the result was not pleasant. Floyd looked at Maureen for a long time before shaking his head. I won't do anything to you. Maureen thought that he was here to confirm the matter of the black cube, so he said, the reason why Sweet came to you at this time is because we want to confirm one thing. What is it? There is something that Sweet told me that he touched when he was a child, which caused abnormalities in his eyes. Is this thing in your hand? The latest novels are published on the 6th-9th book bar. Floyd's face changed again, but he quickly covered it up. I don't know what you are talking about. Floyd said. The black cube. Maureen said bluntly. Floyd was stunned for a moment. He looked around vigilantly and asked in a low voice, how do you know this thing? I don't think you will tell me where it came from. Children should not know such things. Floyd said seriously. I don't expect you to tell me, but I still want to remind you that there are several people eyeing it. Lucas, Moira and Pangard. If you have heard of these three people, their target is the black cube. I don't know when they will find you. Maureen said slowly. Floyd's eyes frowned slightly. He obviously didn't expect Maureen to say such a thing. He was silent for a moment and said, I don't know where you heard it from, but you'd better forget about it. This is not a joke. Maureen simply said, I'm not kidding. If this black cube is really in your hands, you need to be vigilant. I'm here just to confirm that there are a total of 12 black cubes, and they have already got at least 8. Floyd's face became more and more surprised, and his expression became a little uncertain. He seemed to remember something, and said slowly, Hogwarts is far away from here, you can't just come here casually. You two just cast magic in my house again, but minors are not allowed to use magic outside of school. People from the Ministry of Magic will come to find you, but Floyd looked around and continued, I didn't see any warning letter from the Ministry of Magic coming here to find you. They don't seem to notice it, which is not common sense. The last time the sudden spell disrupted the order, the Ministry of Magic received a notice. Their methods are very sophisticated, and they shouldn't turn a blind eye to your magic, unless Floyd stared at Maureen's eyes of different colors, unless you are invisible. Chapter 416 Basketball. Maureen was very surprised. Floyd also knew about the Invisible Man? Floyd had been paying attention to the changes in Maureen's expression. Although Maureen was surprised in his heart, he did not show it on his face. He was not sure whether Floyd could be trusted. There was no need to reveal too much information to a person he just met. Aren't you going to ask me why I know about the Invisible Man? Floyd said. Will you tell me? Maureen asked back. Floyd stared at Maureen for a long time, then shook his head. I don't know what the Invisible Man means, but I know that the Invisible Man is very special. I have heard about it, and you have to be very careful. I know this. No, you are far from clear. I think you already know the specialness of Sweet. Please tell him not to let anyone know that he has seen his ability and your own ability. This is not a joke. Floyd said in a deep voice. What will happen if they find out? Danger. Maureen pondered for a while and said, it's too late. The people who know my identity are Pying, Lucas and Moira, especially Pying. Last year, he wanted to use me and Sweet to resurrect himself. Who exactly is Pying? Floyd asked. A person who lives in the painting. He wants to leave the painting. He took a fancy to the abilities of Sweet and me and tried to use us to resurrect. Maureen simply told Floyd everything that Pying had done. He felt that Floyd must understand how dangerous Pying was. Pying. This name is a bit familiar. I seem to have heard of it somewhere. Floyd frowned. He is a famous painter who left many paintings. Maureen said. Painter. Could it be? Floyd's eyes flickered for a moment, and he seemed to be surprised. Do you know him? Maureen asked. Have you seen him before or something? I don't know him, but I must have heard of him somewhere. Floyd said slowly. Anyway, I will investigate this matter, if Pying really exists. Maureen was sure that there was a black magic cube in Floyd's hands. He originally wanted Floyd to give the black magic cube to him, but he thought that Floyd was unlikely to agree. In addition, Floyd himself was also a very powerful wizard, and the black magic cube was safer in his hands. Moira is an arithmetic fortune teller. Her arithmetic magic is very powerful, but I think you should also have a way to avoid being calculated by her. In any case, you have to be careful. Maureen knew that Floyd must have the blood curse of Sweet. Maureen had also seen the power of this magic. It must be not so easy for Moira to find Floyd. I know that. Floyd nodded slightly. then showed a trace of regret. Tell Sweet, I had my reasons for leaving them. I didn't mean to leave them. You can tell him the truth. No matter what the reasons are, it's best to tell him. I can't. Floyd shook his head. I can't say this. Maureen didn't ask any more questions. This was not something he wanted to interfere with. If you don't say it, I won't force it. Then Mr. Clive, I'll go find Sweet first. Maureen turned and left. Floyd looked at Maureen's back and sighed silently. Maureen found Sweet at the place where Nim played in the sand just now. Sweet was sitting on a bench, staring at the basketball in his hand. Maureen walked over. He didn't know how to comfort Sweet. He didn't want to offer any advice on this matter. Sweet needed to think it through himself. He sat silently beside Sweet, watching other children playing and acting like a spoiled child in their parents' arms, and his heart was a little empty. What did he tell you? Sweet asked sullenly. He said he had his reasons for leaving you, but he didn't say why. Maureen said. That was just his excuse. Sweet squeezed the basketball so hard that it was about to burst in his hands. He seemed to want to vent all his anger on the basketball. Bang! The basketball burst directly. Many Muggle passers-by turned their heads to look at Sweet and were surprised to find that the basketball in Sweet's hand was scrapped. Some children even laughed with gloating. There are a lot of Muggles here. Maureen reminded, you have to control your magic. Sweet lowered his head, his breathing was very heavy, and he threw the basketball to the ground. I can't forgive him. Sweet shook his head. No matter what his reasons were, he shouldn't have done this to us. The pendant on Sweet's neck hung on his chest, and the two fangs swayed gently in front of him. Mom won't forgive him either, otherwise why would she give me this pendant? Sweet's eyes were slightly red. This pendant was a relic left by his mother. It was also because of this pendant that his father couldn't find him. Now he found that he had a half-brother, and his father had been raising his brother, while he was in an orphanage. He felt very unbalanced. What kind of hardship would make him abandon us when I was 3 years old? Sweet couldn't figure it out. He really couldn't figure it out. The two of them just sat on the bench, and no one spoke again. Muggles in the amusement park came and went, but no one had time to pay attention to them. The latest novels are first published on the 6th-9th book bar. Going back? Maureen asked. Sweet nodded silently. He stood up, and then saw the basketball he threw on the ground, bent down and picked up the shrunken basketball, and then left here together. This ball, Maureen hesitated. Sweet took the basketball and shook his head. It doesn't belong to me. Sweet took out his magic wand and tapped the basketball. The basketball that was squeezed out has been restored to its original state and bulged again. Floyd sat on the sofa at home and sighed softly. Dad, where's my basketball? Nim had woken up. He looked around for his basketball, which was a new gift he had just received, but he hadn't seen it since he fell asleep. The basketball was accidentally lost. Dad will buy you another one tomorrow. Floyd touched Nim's head and forced a smile. He didn't tell Nim the truth. Nim didn't even know that he had a brother. But at this moment, Floyd suddenly realized something. He stood up suddenly and ran to the door. When he hurriedly opened the door of his house, he found that there was an intact basketball placed at the door. He looked up, but there was no one on the street. Dad, my basketball came back by itself? Great. Nim ran over happily and picked up the basketball on the ground. Yes, it came back by itself. Floyd murmured. Maureen was silently looking at the house at the corner of the street. Sweet put the basketball back without saying a word and then walked towards him again. You forgive him? Maureen asked. Impossible. Sweet said coldly. Then why? Sweet was silent for a moment, and reluctantly said, that belongs to Nim, and has nothing to do with him. I see. Maureen nodded slightly. Sweet was always a strange person, but Maureen was not surprised. Maureen glanced at Floyd, who was standing at the door and looking around, then grabbed Sweet and disappeared in the town. Chapter 417 Lost Sweet. After returning to school, Maureen and Sweet were blocked by Poker in the common room and scolded. They missed Quidditch training today, and Poker couldn't find them anywhere, which made him extremely annoyed. I don't care what happened to you. Missing Quidditch training is the most inappropriate thing. You two are too much? Poker said angrily. Sweet turned around and walked towards his dormitory, ignoring Poker. Sweet, I didn't ask you to leave, Poker. He's in a bad mood, let him be quiet. Maureen said hurriedly. I don't care how he feels, you should take care of my mood first. I asked someone to look for you all day. Where did you go to find us? Maureen asked. The library, the auditorium, the dormitory, we looked everywhere. Where did you go? The infirmary. Maureen swore nonsense. We were just cursed by someone, and me and I stayed in the school infirmary for a whole day. What? You were attacked? Who did it? Poker was surprised. I don't know, Poker, we were supposed to go to training, but someone behind us cast a curse on us. It must be someone from Ravenclaw. Poker yelled. What? Maureen didn't react. I see, the one who attacked you must be someone from Ravenclaw. We are going to compete with them next week, and they must have someone who doesn't want you to participate in the training. How despicable. Thinking that this can stop it, I'm going to talk to their captain. Wait, it may not be a Ravenclaw student, Maureen yelled. But Poker had already left the common room angrily. Maureen secretly sweated. He felt very sorry for the Ravenclaw students, and hoped that Poker would not fight with the captain of Ravenclaw. Maureen knew that Sweet was in a bad mood now, so he didn't go back to the dormitory, leaving Sweet alone. After dinner in the evening, Maureen and Hugo returned to the dormitory together. Sweet lay on his bed and pulled down the curtains of the bed. He didn't know if he was asleep. I brought you some food. Maureen put a few sandwiches and chicken legs on Sweet's bedside table, and Sweet didn't say anything. Hugo whispered, What's wrong with him? He seems a little strange today. Well, he ran into some trouble. Maureen didn't tell Hugo about Sweet. He felt that only Sweet could choose whether to say it or not, instead of Maureen telling everyone else about it. If Sweet didn't want others to know about his affairs, it wouldn't be good for Maureen to say it. For 3 consecutive days, Sweet didn't say a word. Sweet usually asked the most questions in class, but now that this happened, he seemed listless in class. Maureen received a package on Friday. When he opened it, he found that it was from Floyd, and there were some exquisite desserts inside. Because of the pendant, the owls Floyd sent didn't fly to Sweet, so he could only send it to Maureen, hoping that Maureen would pass it on for him. Maureen told Floyd his name last time, so the owl Floyd sent could find him. But when Maureen gave the things to Sweet, Sweet threw them away. On Saturday, Gryffindor played against Ravenclaw. The weather was sunny and suitable for Quidditch, but Sweet was still not in good shape. He looked even paler, so Pork didn't let him play. He adjusted the tactics and let Maureen be a chaser while Diana looked for the snitch. Halfway through the game, Bruno, the goalkeeper of Gryffindor, was knocked unconscious by the bludger, and Pork had to let Sweet come up to replace him. However, the situation became worse and worse, and Sweet didn't keep a single ball. Maureen, who acted as a chaser, had tried his best to turn the tide, but in the end they were beaten by Ravenclaw. Diana didn't catch the snitch. Ravenclaw's performance was too good, 120 to 230. Gryffindor suffered a crushing defeat. We're screwed now. Pork is going to go crazy on us, James said with some worry. James was half right. Pork was not crazy on them, but on Ravenclaw. He had a fight with the captain of Ravenclaw. You are so despicable, you actually dared to do something dirty to our players. You used despicable means to win the game. Pork and the captain of Ravenclaw got into a fight. His nose was bleeding. James and Albus hurried over to pull him apart. Maureen felt helpless. He saw Sweet sitting in the corner with his head down, feeling depressed, and he didn't know how to comfort him. The latest novel will be first published on 6th Book Bar on September 9th. For a month in a row, Sweet's condition was very bad. For the past month, Maureen has been wondering whether Lucas and the Old Witch have found Floyd. He would write to confirm from time to time, and Floyd would politely reply. It seems that Lucas and the Old Witch seem to have fallen silent again. Although Maureen does not know where the remaining black cube is, he knows that at least one is safe. In addition to learning magic from Arnold and the painting from time to time, Maureen also has to learn the second time and space spell. Now he can finally reach the point where the playback is 5 minutes when casting the afterimage. Although it is still far from Walker's 10 minutes requirement, Maureen is quite satisfied. The afterimage is the most difficult spell he has mastered so far, and it is much more difficult than the so-called 10 elemental magic. In April, Maureen received another package. This time it was not sent by Floyd, but a magazine with a cover of Monsters of the Abyss. It turned out to be a publication of Fantastic Beasts and Here. Maureen almost forgot that he had subscribed to this magazine with a capricious publication schedule at the bookstore in Diagon Alley last year. As expected, the editor-in-chief, who had a lot of money at home, finally published another issue after almost 5 months. This publishing speed was touching. When Maureen saw the Monster of the Abyss logo on the cover, he immediately became excited. He didn't even bother to eat breakfast and couldn't wait to turn to the page about the introduction of Monster of the Abyss. The purpose of subscribing to this magazine was not to learn about those magical creatures, but mainly because this magazine was the first to put forward a view that was completely different from other media reports in the wizarding world. Other media believed that the monster that appeared on Dumbledore's cup was caused by black magic, but only this magazine believed that the monster came from the so-called abyss. Last time, it was probably because the information the magazine had was not complete enough, so it did not provide a detailed explanation. Maureen really wanted to know what view this capricious magazine would put forward this time. Chapter 418 The Rules of the World. On the page about monsters from the abyss in the magazine Fantastic Beasts, and here it says, the appearance of the monsters from the abyss in the Dumbledore Cup competition has now been forgotten, but the conspiracy is far from being so easy to cover up. According to reliable information, the monsters just haven't found the exit for the time being, which doesn't mean they won't appear again. But the abyss where the monsters are is an extremely special place. Mr. Scamander has confirmed that the special dangerous world does exist. Not only that, this world is closely related to the world we live in now. A place with 2 suns during the day and 2 moons at night. Not only monsters live, but also a group of weird people. Daytime is the time for these people to act, and at night, the whole world belongs to the monsters from the abyss. This is the rule of the world of the abyss. The rules of the world are relative. For Muggles, they don't believe in the existence of magic. In the world where Muggles live, their rules are based on the premise of technology without magic. But for our wizarding world, magic is closely related to our lives. Our rules are based on the Muggle world, and we have added the rule of magic. As for the abyss, it is also a rule that the monsters and weirdos there live separately. The rules of their world are beyond the imagination of our wizards. Each world has its own rules. If the rules are broken, then the world will be in chaos. This statement can be explained from another perspective. If our wizards no longer hide and expose the rules of our wizarding world to Muggles, then the Muggle world will be in chaos. But what if the rules of the abyss are exposed in our wizarding world? Just like the monsters that suddenly appeared on the Dumbledore Cup, if they come to us, it is difficult for wizards to deal with them with spells. Relatively speaking, our wizarding world will also be in chaos. The accidental appearance of the abyss monster cannot be so easily revealed. No one knows what consequences it will bring to us. We need to call on everyone to pay enough attention to this phenomenon. We will follow up on the situation of the abyss and bring you more detailed introductions. The existence of the abyss is not a joke, remember. Maureen looked at the article in surprise. A place with 2 suns during the day and 2 moons at night. Because every time he went there, it was at dusk when the sun set, so he saw 2 moons. But this magazine actually said that there were 2 suns in that place during the day? How strange, I should have asked clearly last time. Maureen pondered. He knew too little about this abyss area. Every time he went there, nothing good happened. He either met strange people or monsters who wanted to take him as a snack, but he still couldn't figure out what this place was. The viewpoint on world rules proposed in this article was not unfamiliar to Maureen at all. Because he had thought about this problem a long time ago, not to mention that in addition to going to the abyss area, he had also been to a world he was very familiar with. The world in the painting. Last semester, he was chased around in the painting by Pangard, and every time he passed a painting, he would always encounter various things that made him incredible. The people in the painting could not die, and they only slept for a few hours after being hit by the Avada Kedavra curse. You can make any potion you want, without having to consider the materials and the brewing process. If there are no other paintings next to the painting, there is no way to go. The people in the painting often repeat something. In the Battle of Hogwarts, Voldemort was killed by Harry Potter every day, and Voldemort felt wronged and wanted to go on strike. These are the rules of the world in the painting. He remembered what Arnold in the painting often told him, "You have come to my world, and I am real to you." The place with 2 moons that Maureen went to every time, the people with glowing eyes he met, and the so-called abyss monsters flying around at night, everything in that world is real to Maureen. This is just like Arnold and Sir Cadogan who live in the painting. When Maureen went to the painting, Arnold and Sir Cadogan were also real to him. Does that also mean that the so-called abyss zone is also a world similar to the painting? This can explain why those weirdos with glowing eyes can ignore gravity and walk on trees, walls and other incredible places, why there are 2 moons in the sky, and why those monsters can't break into places with houses. Just like the world in the painting has its own rules, the weirdos and monsters that Maureen has encountered recently are all the rules of that world. But Maureen feels that things are far from that simple. At least the world in the painting can be seen and can be seen everywhere in the castle, but where is the so-called abyss? The abyss is closely related to the world we live in. Maureen pondered this sentence carefully. He felt that he was about to figure out the key to the matter. If what was said in this magazine was true, combined with what happened last time at the Dumbledore Cup, Zimmerman deliberately let him get the black cube and let him bring the long-armed bat monster from the abyss. Then a light flashed in his mind. Could that world exist? And Maureen felt a little incredible. He felt that this idea was a bit bizarre, so bizarre that even he couldn't believe it. But after getting lost for no reason so many times, he felt that this idea was most likely true. The latest novel is first published on 69 Shuba. The so-called Abyss Zone exists in the 12 black cubes. This can explain a very practical phenomenon, because every time Maureen went to that world, he was close to the black cube. That is, he went to that place through the black cube. The room of requirement can allow people to enter the world of paintings, so can an entrance to that world be opened? Maureen pondered this matter in his heart. Although Arnok did not allow him to go there casually, he felt that if he figured out what the world meant, he should be able to figure out Pianjit's conspiracy. Arnok reminded him not to stay in that world for more than half an hour. If the room of requirement could take him there, he only needed to remember this. In order to verify this, Maureen immediately stuffed the magazine into his school bag and ran out of the auditorium. Maureen, where are you going? I haven't finished my meal yet. I have to go to class later. Hugo shouted from behind. I'll be back soon. Maureen had already run out of the auditorium and ran to the room of requirement on the 7th floor. He wanted to verify his idea. The room of requirement is a very magical thing. It can take Maureen to the world in the painting, and maybe it can also take him to the abyss. Maureen is already familiar with the room of requirement. At this time, many students are eating breakfast in the auditorium, and only a few people are walking down the stairs. Maureen hurriedly climbed up to the 7th floor and came to the room of requirement. I need a place that can lead to 2 moons. Maureen thought hard about old Darrow's house, and at the same time, the scene of the abyss appeared in his mind. He was very nervous, but also quite looking forward to it. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 419, The House of Requests. 5 minutes passed, and the room of requirement did not change. If the room of requirement wants to meet a request, it must clearly think of the request in its mind. Maureen changed a few more ideas, including I need to know how to go to the world of the black cube, I need to go to a place with 2 suns and 2 moons, I need a way to get to Arnok, I need to go to a world where people with glowing eyes live. However, he changed several ideas in a row, and the room of requirement could not meet his request. It doesn't work. Maureen sighed in his heart. Although he had expected this result, he still felt a little disappointed. Am I wrong? Maureen took out the paper from his pocket and stared at the 12 patterns on it in thought. If he guessed correctly, these 12 patterns should all be at the bottom of the 12 black cubes. Professor Adams said that one of the patterns was the symbol of their family. Does that mean that these 12 patterns represent the 12 families? But what about the symbols of the 4 colleges, Gryffindor, Slytherin, etc.? In addition, what about the symbols of Piangard and Grindelwald? You know, Grindelwald's symbol does not belong to their family, but he stole it from the story of the Deathly Hallows. Maureen was puzzled. He wanted to know the origin of these 12 patterns very urgently, but unfortunately there was no way. Forget it, let's go to class first. When Maureen was about to put away the paper, a strange door appeared on the wall in front of him. The door was yellow and black, and there was a Hufflepuff badger on the door, looking at him stupidly. What is this? Maureen was stunned for a moment. He looked at the badger that suddenly appeared on the wall and didn't react for a while. How did the door of Hufflepuff College suddenly appear in the room of requirement? The badger on the door was very big, almost as big as Maureen. It looked like a painting, but no painting was so lifelike, because the badger gave people a very real feeling, as if it was alive. What does the appearance of this door mean? Can this door take me to that place? Maureen looked around in the corridor. Generally, There were few students here. But he still needs to be careful. What if this door really leads to the abyss and attracts monsters after it is opened? That would be a big problem. He pushed the door carefully, but it didn't open. Strictly speaking, this doesn't seem to be a door, because there is no door handle or keyhole. Does he need to take out his wand and knock on it, or recite a spell or something? Don't tell me I need the password to the Hufflepuff common room. Maureen muttered. Unfortunately, he didn't know many Hufflepuff students. He was probably only slightly familiar with Hufflepuff's captain, Nooster. After all, Nooster was also in the GHRS club. When they were studying advanced magic, they were still friends. But it was a bit too abrupt for him to ask for the password to the common room. Just as Maureen was thinking about how to open this door, the badger's eyes suddenly glowed. Its eyes were yellow, but its pupils were black. Maureen had never noticed this before. At this time, the honest badger on the door stretched out his hand and grabbed Maureen's hand. Before Maureen could react, he was dragged into the door. What the hell? Maureen stumbled. He was not prepared at all. When he was caught by the badger, he felt that he could not get rid of it at all, and then he fell to the ground. Who is it? How rude. Maureen touched his butt and got up depressedly, then quickly pulled out his wand and looked around vigilantly. It was pitch black in front of him, and he didn't know where he was, but there seemed to be a beam of light on Maureen from the ceiling. Maureen raised his head to see where the light came from, but the light was too dazzling, so he could only lower his head again. Will the room of requirement really take me to that place? Maureen was puzzled. The purpose of coming here early in the morning was just to confirm whether the room of requirement could take him to that place, not that he really wanted to go to that ghost place. You must know that Arnold seriously told him not to go there for no reason, and that he could not stay there for more than half an hour. But then he thought, it was only morning now, even if he went to the abyss, shouldn't there be two suns hanging high? What did this spotlight mean? Maureen took 2 steps forward cautiously and found that the spotlight followed him forward, as if there was a dedicated lighting engineer in the dark watching him from above, shining a big light on him. He had seen this before, and he had also seen some magic wizard concerts before, where the wizard singers walked on the stage, the spotlight followed. But what did he mean by this? When he was outside the room of requirement just now, he was not thinking about holding a concert, so why did he suddenly come to such a strange place? For some reason, Maureen had an extremely strong feeling of being spied on, as if this spotlight was used by someone to monitor him in the dark. This feeling became stronger and stronger, making him uncomfortable. The latest novels are published on the 6th-9th book bar. Is anyone there? Maureen asked tentatively. There was silence all around, only his voice echoed. I'm just here to hang out. If I disturb you, I'll leave right away. Maureen said bravely. Still no one answered him. Doy, do you have that feeling? Maureen took Doy out of his pocket. Doy was eating biscuits in his pocket. When Maureen dragged Doy away just now, Doy also took 2 biscuits in her arms and was chewing them happily. If they had gone to that place, Doy and he would definitely know it, because the feeling was too strong and easy to identify. But he didn't have that feeling at this time, maybe because there was a centaur fire in his pocket, so he needed to ask Doy. Doy chewed the biscuits in a daze, blinked her eyes, and then shook her head and said, Doy, great. No? Then where are we? Maureen put Doy on his shoulder and continued to walk forward. There was nothing around, no steps, no ups and downs, no obstacles, nothing at all. It was really weird. Except for the sound of his footsteps. Da. 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 Walking in the dark, with a spotlight following him all the time, only his footsteps echoed. This scene was really weird. Not to mention that Maureen now felt like he was being seen naked. Why was he so embarrassed? At this moment, with a snap, the spotlight suddenly went out, and the surroundings suddenly fell into darkness. Chapter 420, Stone Arch in the Dark. Maureen took a breath of cold air. Did the spotlight run out of power? Was it not going to continue lighting or what? It would be easy to scare people if it failed at this time. He was about to say fluorescent flash to illuminate, but he found that the darkness around him suddenly slowly receded, as if a faint light came from the darkness and shone in front of him. Maureen stopped and looked at the front in surprise. The spotlight had gathered in front of him and shone on a stone platform in front. This stone platform was made of countless simple stone strips. The stone strips showed a bronze luster, as if they had experienced a baptism of time, and there was an indescribable sense of vicissitudes. On this stone platform, There was a stone arch made of stone blocks. It was the stone arch that suddenly appeared in front of Hogwarts Castle when school started in September last year. What does this mean? Maureen looked at the stone arch in surprise. Why did a stone arch appear here? The sudden appearance of the stone arch outside the Hogwarts Castle caused a lot of discussion among students when school started last year. Everyone speculated that the stone arch might hide the inheritance or treasure of the 4 founders of the school. But Principal McGonagall protected the stone arch and no one was allowed to approach it. Everyone could only watch. Many people wanted to find out the reason why the stone arch suddenly appeared, but no one had a clue. Over time, many people have become accustomed to the existence of this stone arch and no longer think about what it represents. But Maureen had seen this stone arch before, because in Paingard's memory, Paingard had once set his sights on this stone arch in the Department of Mysteries of the Ministry of Magic. Arnold also mentioned the origin of this stone arch to him, but did not explain it in too much detail. He has been thinking about the 12 black cubes recently. If he hadn't seen this in this strange place, Maureen would have even forgotten that there was a stone arch that suddenly appeared outside the Hogwarts Castle. Maureen hesitated for a moment, because he couldn't normally get close to the stone arch outside Hogwarts Castle, so he wanted to take this opportunity to get close to see what was so special about the stone arch. There were lions, eagles, snakes and a badger guarding the stone arch, and they surrounded the stone arch. However, just as Maureen took a step, the 4 animals on the stone arch suddenly moved. The Gryffindor lion was originally lying next to the stone arch, but when he saw Maureen, he stood up, shook his mane, and his mighty eyes were full of deterrence. The Slytherin snake hovered on the stone arch, and its body rotated twice around the top of the stone arch, and its head poked forward, and its tongue kept swallowing. The Ravenclaw eagle spread its wings, and all the feathers on its body were stretched out, as if it was about to fly, but soon it folded up again, and a pair of sharp eagle eyes stared at Maureen. The Hufflepuff badger shook his head beside the stone archway, and the 2 small ears on his head trembled. He stretched out his 2 paws, hugged the stone archway, and changed his posture. "These 4 statues will not attack me, right?" Maureen muttered. He stopped and felt a little scared. Born in a wizard family, he knew that many statues would be cast with powerful magic, and these statues would attack others. If these 4 animals pounced on him, he might not be able to resist. But the 4 statues did not seem to have any intention of attacking him. When Maureen stopped, they just changed their posture and looked at Maureen, without any intention of pounce. Maureen bravely continued to walk forward and stepped onto the stone platform along the stairs. The eyes of the 4 statues were always on Maureen, without moving. When Maureen was about to approach the stone platform, the Gryffindor lion suddenly lowered his head and let out a slight roar. The sound scared Maureen. He thought the Gryffindor lion was going to pounce on him, so he quickly raised his wand to be on guard. But the Gryffindor lion just slowly began to walk around Maureen, with a look like a beast sizing up its prey, looking for the best time to strike, which made Maureen feel an inexplicable sense of oppression. The Hufflepuff badger also got on all 4s and circled around Maureen with the Gryffindor lion, looking at Maureen. Although it looked honest, Maureen had no doubt that if this badger took action, it would definitely not be as easy to fool as it looked. The Slytherin snake's tail was hooked on the door frame, and the snake's body was like a rope hanging down. Then it raised its head, spit out its tongue at Maureen, and showed its sharp fangs, as if warning Maureen not to get close to the stone arch. The Ravenclaw eagle had already flown up from above the stone arch. Although it was a stone sculpture, its body was as flexible as a real eagle. It circled over Maureen, and its sharp claws hung in the air, as if it was going to grab him the next moment. "Sorry, shouldn't I be here?" Maureen found himself surrounded by 4 animal statues of Hogwarts School, and he felt uneasy. The 4 animals just looked at Maureen, and the atmosphere was frozen for a moment. Maureen didn't know what to do. He was hesitating whether to retreat or continue to approach the stone arch. Judging from the alert actions of the 4 statues, retreating was a wiser choice. But he was not willing to do so. Although he didn't know what the stone arch of Hogwarts meant, the existence of the stone arch was related to Paingard, and it was also the first time he got so close, and he wanted to take a good look at the stone arch. "You won't let me get close to this stone arch, right?" Maureen asked. He didn't know whether the 4 animals could understand him, but it was always good to ask politely. The 4 animals suddenly made sounds. The roar of the Gryffindor lion was mighty and majestic, the cry of the Ravenclaw eagle was sharp and long, The cry of the Hufflepuff badger was honest and high, and the hiss of the Slytherin snake was hoarse and low. But Maureen couldn't understand what they meant at all. The latest novels are published on the 69th Book Forum. Doi, you are also a little beast. Can little beasts understand each other's beast language? Can you help translate? Maureen said to Doi, who was chewing biscuits on his shoulder. Doi held the biscuits in her little paws, tilted her head and thought for a while, then pointed at the stone arch, and then pointed at the four animals, with her little paws on her waist, and said proudly, Doi, great. Great. Maureen shook his head helplessly. Doi's translation was so straightforward that it was the same as not translating. My name is Maureen Walker. If you can understand, I am from Gryffindor College. Maureen felt that it was always a virtue to introduce oneself politely wherever you go. The Gryffindor lion roared softly again. Maureen was just wondering what the Gryffindor lion's roar meant, whether it was a greeting or something, but at this moment, a gray-white curtain suddenly dropped from the stone archway, fluttering gently, and then the stone archway emitted a faint white light. Then a voice suddenly rang in his ears. This voice was made by a person, and the voice was extremely ethereal, as if someone was whispering in his ear. Maureen even felt a cold wind blowing through his ears. He shuddered involuntarily. Chapter 421 Legilimens. Maureen was really frightened by the sudden voice. It was not a fun thing to hear strange voices in such a strange place, especially when he was surrounded by four animals. Who is talking there? Maureen didn't hear what the voice said at all. He looked around and thought that the four statues were talking. The Room of Requirement always provides help to children in need. The voice floated melodiously again. So this is still in the Room of Requirement. This time Maureen heard it clearly. The voice sounded inexplicably friendly. It was a woman's voice. Maureen could even tell from the voice that the person speaking was a kind and gentle woman. But he still didn't see where the person speaking was. Didn't you come here to seek help? The voice asked. Yes, I need help, but I thought I had gone to that place, you know, the place with two moons, Maureen muttered. It takes a special method to get there. I can't do it for you. Maureen asked doubtfully, may I ask who you are? You come here to seek help, but you don't know who I am. Are you the Room of Requirement? Maureen asked doubtfully. He came here to seek help from the Room of Requirement, but when did the Room of Requirement become able to talk to him? He often went to the Room of Requirement, but he didn't remember that the room had such an ability. I'm not the Room of Requirement, the voice said happily, but I built this Room of Requirement. Did you build the Room of Requirement? Maureen was slightly stunned. He only remembered that Hogwarts had such a magical Room of Requirement, which had been selflessly providing a lot of help to the teachers and students of the school for thousands of years. It would appear in time when everyone needed something most urgently. This room has provided help to many students, including providing a shelter for students, hiding illegal magic items, etc. Maureen used the Room of Requirement mostly to secretly leave the school to see Arnold, but he didn't know who built the Room of Requirement. Not only him, I'm afraid that those who have received gifts from the Room of Requirement don't know who built it. Maureen felt a little embarrassed. It was a bit rude to use someone's things so many times when he didn't know them. But he felt creepy when he heard this voice. No matter who built the Room of Requirement, that person should have lived many years ago. Now suddenly jumped out and spoke. Maureen felt a little numb on his scalp. He remembered what happened in the painting last semester. The person who was talking in front of him, could it be another Peeing? To be honest, one Peeing was enough. He really didn't want to meet another ancient wizard waiting to use him as a sacrifice. That would be too unlucky. Oh, don't worry about that. The voice continued gently in the darkness. I am just a consciousness left behind by magic, just like the Gryffindor had. I like to help people and don't like to cause trouble to people. Can you hear what I am thinking? Maureen was surprised. He was just thinking about this in his mind. I am a natural legilimency. I know everything in your mind. The voice said. Legislatives? But I remember. Maureen was very surprised, because he remembered that he could not be legilimency. The last time Payengard used this magic on him, he was able to spy on his memory in return. My legilimency is special. Unlike others, I don't need to learn or use a wand. I can tell what you are thinking with just one look. Even if you are born with the ability to perform occlumency, it won't work for me. The Sorting Hat can read your thoughts, right? It's Godric's hat, but I helped him a little. The dark voice seemed very happy that she had this ability. She continued, when you come to me, you will ask me for help, and then you will reveal all your memories to me. I know what everyone is thinking, so I can make the room of requirement produce what you need most correctly. So you don't have to doubt my ability. Is that so? Maureen felt incredible. He had never thought about this issue carefully. When everyone uses the room of requirement, they need to recall their most urgent needs in their minds, but it seems that no one has thought about the magical principles of the room of requirement. It turns out that the room of requirement can meet everyone's requirements because a natural legilimency master used legilimency on them. But who is this natural legilimency master? Why does it seem that no one has ever mentioned it? Suddenly, a thought flashed through Maureen's mind. He remembered that when he was outside the room of requirement just now, he was forcibly pulled here by the badger on the door. He opened his eyes wide and said in surprise, "You are not, my God, this can't be true. The latest novel is first published on the 69th book bar. This is true." The voice said happily. She already knew what Maureen was thinking. Since the establishment of Hogwarts, this room has helped so many children, but no one remembers who I am. Of course, I don't want them to be grateful to me. I like to help others, but if someone knows my name, I will still be very happy. But, how is this possible? I thought Maureen didn't react for a long time. Oh my God. I didn't know this room was built by Helga Hufflepuff. One of the 4 founders of Hogwarts, the founder of Hufflepuff College. You know now. Hufflepuff said gently. Maureen still found it incredible, because Hufflepuff was a relatively inconspicuous house among the 4 houses. But on second thought, it didn't seem so difficult to accept. Gryffindor recruits brave students, Slytherin recruits smart pure-blood students, Ravenclaw recruits the smartest students, and only Hufflepuff House treats students equally and is willing to selflessly help any students grow. The room of requirement has helped countless students, which is in line with the concept of Hufflepuff. Maureen had only heard of Slytherin leaving behind a secret room with a 1,000-year-old basilisk in it, waiting for future generations to open it and cleanse the school of wizards with impure blood. It was opened more than 20 years ago. Unexpectedly, Helga Hufflepuff also left behind such a room, and it was the room of requirement that he was very familiar with. Hogwarts was originally a castle built by the 4 of us to provide a place for wizard apprentices to receive education, but we all have our own ideas about running a school, so you don't have to be too surprised. Hufflepuff paused, as if remembering something, and said gently, "You have to understand that this school is not just about Saltra, who left a secret room. Godric and Rowena also left their own treasures, waiting for future generations to dig." Maureen was surprised. "Wait, you mean, Mr. Gryffindor and Ms. Ravenclaw also left similar rooms?" Chapter 422 Hufflepuff. Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets, Hufflepuff's Room of Requirement. Then where are Gryffindor and Ravenclaw's magic rooms? Everyone has their own privacy. Although I like to help others, I will not reveal other people's secrets. Hufflepuff always knows what is in Maureen's mind. Maureen can't help but start to wonder what the remaining 2 rooms are. Although he has been studying at Hogwarts for almost 2 years, he has not walked through the entire castle. Maureen remembered the purpose of coming here. Although there are 4 very strange stone sculptures around him, thinking that this is the room of requirement left by the kind Hufflepuff, he doesn't need to worry about any danger. "By the way, why did you suddenly come to talk to me?" Maureen asked. He has been here so many times, and he doesn't remember that the room of requirement has talked to him. It is very fresh that it suddenly appeared today and dragged him here. "You came to seek my help, and your request is very special. When my legilimency magic detects special needs, I will come out to respond to you and observe you, and then decide whether to help you. Is it because you can't take me to the place with 2 moons, so you need to explain it to me?" Maureen asked. If so, he felt that Hufflepuff was really a patient and good wizard. "I won't take you there. Although I will try my best to help students, not all requests will be met. Magic has its own rules. Beyond these rules, this room alone cannot do it." Hufflepuff's voice echoed around. Maureen nodded thoughtfully. Although this room is powerful, it also has some limitations. For example, it cannot produce food, because food is one of the 5 exceptions to Gamp's basic transformation. Hufflepuff then said, "But I didn't come to you for the place with 2 moons, I came for another thing." "Another thing?" Maureen didn't quite understand. "The pattern of the 12 black magic cubes? You just took the drawing and kept trying to figure out what it meant, so I came." Hufflepuff said. "Will you answer my confusion? About these 12 patterns?" Maureen asked in surprise. "I can only give you some hints." Hufflepuff said, "Others want to find the truth about these 12 patterns. I won't reveal it because it's very important. But I saw your memory and know everything about you. Maureen suddenly realized. No wonder the damn spotlight had been shining on him since he came in just now, as if he could see through his whole body. In front of a powerful legilimency master like Hufflepuff, all his privacy was exposed. Yes, I saw your relationship with a black cube. You are an invisible man, a very special invisible man, closely related to the 12 black cubes. You are the one who can break the rules. Hufflepuff's voice had a meaningful tone. Break the rules? What rules? Does it mean that I can't be predicted? Or what? Hufflepuff didn't answer him directly, but the stone archway in front of Maureen suddenly lit up. 12 patterns suddenly appeared on the rough stone archway. The 12 patterns lit up separately, forming a groove. They were the 12 patterns that Maureen saw. The Slytherin snake in the center of the stone archway twisted its body and spit its tongue at Maureen. Maureen thought that the stone snake would not attack him, so he planned to approach the stone archway to see what was going on. Don't go through this door, Hufflepuff said. Maureen stopped in a hurry, and the snake hissed at him threateningly. Sorry, what will happen if I go through this door? Maureen asked in confusion. You can't go back, you can only go down, Hufflepuff said softly. Maureen took a step back, and he thought it would be better for him to be obedient. You can only go down, does that mean you will die? Maureen asked. He remembered that Arnold had told him this. The road to the other side is not so easy to walk. Hufflepuff seemed to be sighing, and it seemed to be humming, and the voice was so ethereal that it was hard to understand, especially when you still have something to worry about. The road to the other side. Maureen didn't quite understand what this meant. Can you explain it more clearly? I can't explain this. Hufflepuff's voice became lower and lower, and Maureen thought she was going to disappear, but Hufflepuff raised her voice again and returned to her original ethereal voice. But don't worry, the door here is not real, so it's okay for you to walk over. Oh. Maureen wanted to complain. If it wasn't real, why did he say it as if it was real and scared him? But he remembered that he had some thoughts in his mind, and Hufflepuff could hear them, so he thought it was better not to complain. But he forgot one thing. When he thought about it, Hufflepuff already knew it. Don't think I'm trying to scare you. You've seen this door, although it was in Piengad's memory, you know where it is. That Arnok knows the past of this door and what Piengad is going to do. What he's doing is right, you can trust him, said Hufflepuff. The latest novels are first published on 69 Shuba. But what exactly is Piengad going to do? Maureen was completely confused. He only knew that Piengad had instructed Lucas to steal the 12 Rubik's Cubes, but he didn't know what Piengad's plan was, and Arnok had never mentioned it to him. You already know what Piengad is going to do, said Hufflepuff. I already know. Maureen was surprised. Why didn't he remember knowing Piengad's plan? The key, said Hufflepuff. Key? What key? Maureen asked. I saw your memory. Arnok mentioned to you that after you told him about the stone arch, Arnok mentioned to you the legend about the four of us and the stone arch. Arnok is a very outstanding wizard. I am surprised that he knows about us. The legend of the stone arch. Maureen carefully recalled Hufflepuff's words. He remembered that he ran to find Arnok and his wife a few days after coming out of the painting, and told Arnok about the stone arch and Piengard's memory. At that time, Arnok mentioned one thing to him. This stone arch was opened by the four founders of Hogwarts, but they closed it again after opening it. No one knew what the four of them saw, but a special key was needed to open this stone arch. It's just that Arnok never told Maureen what the key looked like. But Maureen suddenly realized what this special key meant. The legend of the stone arch in chapter 181, you can review it if you forget it. Chapter 423 The key to the stone arch. You mean the black cube is the key to this stone arch? Maureen exclaimed. You can understand it that way, Hufflepuff said. This really surprised Maureen, as he had never thought of keys before. When Arnold mentioned the key to him, his first impression of the key was that kind of bronze carved key, which might also be engraved with the icons of the four founders. But he never thought that the black cube that had been making him dizzy recently was actually the key to the stone arch. So, Piengard really planned to collect 12 keys to open this stone arch. So what exactly would happen after opening this door? Arnold didn't say it clearly at the beginning, because the four founders of Hogwarts School did not leave any detailed records. Maureen thought that he would run to the place of two moons as soon as he approached the black cube. Could it be that wait, you don't want to tell me that after this door is opened, I will go to that world? Maureen was surprised. Pianged wants to open this door and attract the monsters from that world. I can't give you an accurate answer to this question. All my speculations come from your memory. I don't know Pianged. He never came to my place when he was in Hogwarts, so I don't know what he is thinking, said Hufflepuff. Pianged has never been here. Maureen was very surprised. Pianged had been hiding in the painting for hundreds of years. He understood the rise and fall of wizards in each era through his paintings that were circulated everywhere. I am afraid that few people can match his magical knowledge. When Pianged came to Hogwarts, he must have known that there was a room of requirement in Hogwarts. If he could use the room of requirement, his plan should have been more perfect. However, he had never used the room of requirement once. Now it seems that Pianged must have known who left the room of requirement. The fact that this guy could live in the painting for so many years without being discovered is indeed inseparable from his cautious nature. Maureen pondered Hufflepuff's words, and he couldn't help asking, so what kind of world is the place with 2 moons? It's a very strange place. How strange? Maureen asked in confusion. The world we live in is far more complicated than you think. What you see on weekdays is just the surface, but the deeper things are hidden behind that door. Hufflepuff said slowly. What do you mean by deeper things? Maureen asked again. The world has rules. When the door is opened, the rules will be in chaos. Hufflepuff said. The world has rules? Maureen suddenly remembered that this word was mentioned in Scamander's article. The rules you mentioned, do you mean that the monsters from that world will be brought in and destroy our current wizard world? Maureen knew clearly that ordinary wizards could not deal with those monsters. If those monsters came over, they would probably cause a riot. Without our Nox level, wizards would be completely helpless against these monsters. Worse? Hufflepuff's answer was simple. Worse than this. I can't explain it to you too clearly. I'm just a consciousness left by magic. Hufflepuff said softly, but preventing this door from being opened is undoubtedly the most important thing. I'm already stopping it. Otherwise, what do you think I've been doing recently? Traveling around the world, Maureen muttered, but you may have forgotten that my current magic level is not as good as that of an adult wizard. Under Arnok's teachings, he has mastered many spells and transfiguration. The only drawback is that these spells are more than enough to deal with people of the same age, but he has no chance of winning against a wizard with truly superb magic. Last time he used a stunning spell on Lucas, he couldn't knock him out completely. Lucas's own magic ability was higher than his, so he could offset part of the power of the stunning spell. Magic doesn't rely on the strength of the spell. Hufflepuff said, a truly excellent wizard is not because his spells are stronger than others, but because he is better at adapting to changing circumstances than others. This statement is too mysterious. Maureen spread his hands. He found Hufflepuff's words a little familiar, and then he remembered that Arnold had often told him these truths before, and Hufflepuff's words were probably found in his mind. But he felt that when he faced Lucas and the Old Witch, his ability to adapt to changing circumstances was not very useful, especially the Old Witch, who fired spells like a Muggle machine gun, bang bang bang, so Maureen couldn't find any chance at all. If the 12 black cubes are the keys to the stone arch, and there are those strange patterns under the black cubes, so are the Addams family, the Clive family, and Anron's ancestors all the people who guard the keys to the stone arch. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Sweet and Anron both have those strange patterns in their eyes, and the Addams family originated not long after Hogwarts was founded, which seems to make sense. Yes, it's a pity that too much time has passed, and some of the Guardians' families have disappeared in history. Hufflepuff said regretfully. So what are the total families? If you can tell me clearly, maybe I can find the remaining keys before Pianged. Maureen asked impatiently. The 12 patterns on the stone arch lit up again, and these 12 patterns seemed to be written with white lines and floated in the air. Gryffindor, Slytherin, Ravenclaw, Hufflepuff, our 4 families, Clive, Briar, Addams, Peveril. You are already familiar with these 4 families. Every time Hufflepuff said a family, a pattern would light up. She continued, the remaining 4 families are Cuthbert, Ambrose, Lacanlove and Pianged. Maureen's eyes widened. What? Pianged? Maureen was deeply surprised. He never expected that Pianged was also one of the 12 people who protected the family. Yes, Pianged, his mark is one of the 12 keys. Hufflepuff's tone became a little strange, as if she was sighing, and as if she was regretting. The 12 families have been passed down for too long, and there will always be descendants who go astray. It turned out to be like this. Pangard's mark will appear in these 12 patterns, a pen with an eye drawn under the pen. Maureen didn't understand what was going on at first, but now he understands it. No wonder Pangard was so excited when he saw the stone archway when he was in the Department of Mysteries last time. As one of the 12 guardians of the stone archway, he knew clearly what the stone archway meant. Chapter 424 12 Families. Among the 12 patterns, there are the mark of the once famous Wolf King Rakenlev and the mark of Grindelwald, but Grindelwald's mark comes from the mark of the three Peveril brothers, the owners of the Deathly Hallows. Merlin had been wondering why Voldemort's mark did not appear in these 12 patterns. He only figured it out now, because it was rumored that Voldemort was a descendant of Slytherin, so the Slytherin snake was the real pattern, and the black skull mark was just Voldemort's own painstaking effort. It can only represent himself and scare the former wizards, but it cannot represent the marks of the 12 families. Sweet Clive, Anrin Brill, and Professor Adams, Merlin is familiar with these three people. Merlin is also basically clear about Wolf King Rakenlev and Pangard. He also knows some of the legends of the Peveril family about the three brothers of the Deathly Hallows. Needless to say, the four founders of Hogwarts, but who are Cuthbert and Ambrose? The most important point is that even if he knew the names of these people, he couldn't determine where the descendants of these families are now. It would be like looking for a needle in a haystack to find them. Maureen sighed. He was confused now. Even if he knew these secrets, he still had no idea where to start. The Gryffindor lion stone sculpture squatted in front of him, stretched out its claws to scratch its face, stretched out its tongue to lick its palm, and then growled at him twice. Hufflepuff continued, "You have to understand one thing. After many families are passed down, their surnames are not necessarily the same as the original ones. Most of them will change for some reason. For example, the Peveril family has three famous brothers. Now they are divided into the Potter, Dumbledore and Gaunt families." Huh? Maureen opened his eyes wide. Potter? Dumbledore? Harry Potter and Headmaster Dumbledore. Yes, I'm just giving you some hints. They have all been to the Room of Requirement, so I know their memories. Hufflepuff said. Maureen was very surprised. He thought about it carefully. Lily once mentioned their family's invisibility cloak to Maureen, which was one of the Deathly Hallows. Dumbledore once got the Elder Wand, maybe because his ancestor's wand was taken away, so Dumbledore won it back. Although Maureen was not very clear about the Gaunt family's resurrection stone, he had vaguely heard of it. Maureen looked at the four animal stone sculptures, which represented the four colleges of Hogwarts. He couldn't wait to ask, "Where are the four of you black cubes? Where should I go to find the descendants of your four families? Did you hide the black cube in this school?" "I can't answer this. I don't know everything," Hufflepuff said. "All the knowledge I am familiar with comes from the memories of the students I have helped, but many students from wizarding families don't know the origins of their families, so I can't know more. But I can tell you that the black cube is not in the school, because it is too dangerous and not suitable for students to take risks. The black cube will not be gathered together, but kept separately." Maureen felt that things were getting quite tricky, just like Anran herself was a descendant of one of the 12 families, but she herself didn't know it. Even if she came to the Room of Requirement, the Room of Requirement didn't know Anran's identity. And Pangard himself came from the family of the 12 Guardians. He knew much more than Maureen. Compared with the profound knowledge of Maureen and Pangard, he was far inferior. Pangard must know who the 12 families are, but Maureen is completely clueless. Don't be discouraged. The people in the 12 families are all special. They have extraordinary magical abilities. Their descendants will awaken to some extent. If they don't awaken, it's just that they haven't found the right time, Hufflepuff said. Extraordinary abilities, for example. Slytherin's Parseltongue, Legilimency, Anarin's extraordinary healing ability, Sweet's blood curse magic, Dumbledore's Phoenix, Pangard's extraordinary painting magic, and Wolf King Rakenlev's ability to turn into a werewolf without a full moon. These are all their abilities. What about Ravenclaw and Gryffindor? What are their abilities? I don't know, Hufflepuff said truthfully. You don't know? But how could you not know? I mean, you and they founded Hogwarts together, didn't you? Maureen was puzzled. I'm not a real person. I'm just the consciousness of a magical being, following my own principles. If some magical abilities are deliberately concealed, I won't choose to peek out of politeness. If you have memories that you don't want others to know, I won't look at them. But you are like many people. When you come to me, You habitually reveal all your thoughts to me in order to get what you need. So I know what you know, Maureen suddenly realized, and he suddenly felt a little fortunate. Fortunately, Hufflepuff was a helpful wizard and had no malice, otherwise it would be hard to say what serious consequences would be caused. Hufflepuff continued, Ravenclaw and Gryffindor will protect their abilities for safety reasons. Their descendants have not used the Room of Requirement. In other words, even if they have used it, if they do not have the relevant memories of their ancestors in their minds and have not awakened the corresponding abilities, I will not know. The limitations of the Room of Requirement are also quite large. Although many wizards have studied at Hogwarts and countless students have come and gone in the Room of Requirement, if the other descendants of the 12 families do not know their identities and abilities, the Room of Requirement will not know. Hufflepuff continued, the most important point is that if you have been peeped into my memory and want me to forget it, I will do it for you. Helping others is the principle of this room's existence, and being asked to forget is also necessary. Maybe I knew the memories of the descendants of Gryffindor and Ravenclaw before, but now I have been asked to forget it. After all, the Room of Requirement is not a real person. It is just a rule formed by magic. If there are rules, you must act according to the rules. Even being asked to forget is one of the rules. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Can you keep my secret from me? I don't want others to know my affairs. Maureen said hurriedly, because many people use the Room of Requirement, and some secrets are not good to be made public. Some students must have asked for this in the past. Without your consent, I won't tell anyone what you know. Hufflepuff said. Maureen couldn't help but think that Hufflepuff was really a very kind and principled wizard. But he suddenly thought that Hufflepuff said that Pinged had never been to the Room of Requirement. Could it be that Pinged asked the Room of Requirement to forget this? Don't worry about this. When someone wants to open the stone arch, I won't choose to help. Hufflepuff always knows what Maureen is thinking. So that's it. Maureen nodded slightly. It is estimated that with Pinged's caution, he should not come here either. But even so, Maureen still couldn't get any clues. At Hogwarts, those who seek help always get it. Hufflepuff said. What does this mean? Maureen asked. Chapter 425 Help. The stone archway emitted a white light again. Whether it was the Gryffindor lion, the Ravenclaw eagle, the Slytherin snake, or the Hufflepuff badger, the four statues that were rotating around him suddenly jumped towards the stone archway, hit the floating curtain, and disappeared into the stone archway. The shape of the stone archway began to change, as if it was dissolving little by little, and then condensed into the shape of a badger. The badger looked as if it was transparent and emitting a joyful light. Then Maureen understood what this badger was. Patronus. Maureen was surprised. He had not learned the magic of Patronus, but Alton often conjured up Patronus for him to play with, so Maureen was very familiar with Patronus. Don't let the stone archway be opened, Hufflepuff said. The badger pounced on Maureen. Maureen was thinking about whether he should dodge or not, but the badger had already hit his chest and disappeared into his body. You should go to class. I can only help you here. Hufflepuff's voice slowly drifted away. She was still talking in Maureen's ear a second ago. When she said the last word, it seemed that she was talking to Maureen across a river. Then Maureen felt a flash in front of his eyes, as if he was pushed out by something. When he came to his senses, he was standing in the corridor on the 7th floor again. Wait, I want to know what the stone arch outside the school is used for. Maureen shouted. But Hufflepuff didn't respond to him anymore. Even when Maureen thought about the 12 patterns again, the Room of Requirement didn't change. Maureen was a little depressed. He didn't understand everything completely, but Hufflepuff didn't mean to continue explaining. He touched his chest and pulled his ears, wondering, by the way, where did the badger go just now? The Patronus ran into his body, but he didn't seem to feel anything. But soon, he suddenly remembered that class had started, so he quickly picked up his school bag and ran to the classroom. When Maureen arrived at a black cube defense classroom, he was already 10 minutes late. He gritted his teeth and shouted report. Professor Francis stared at him with a frown. I don't like people being late for my class. Professor Francis' voice was emotionless and even a little cold. Sorry, Professor, I just have a stomachache. Maureen made up an excuse. Go back to your seat. If you don't want to die from the Zorro Demon Falcon, listen carefully to the next class. Professor Francis waved his hand and continued, we just talked about magical creatures like the Zorro Demon Falcon. Their sense of taste is very sensitive. They can track your scent 10 kilometers away. This creature is very fast, so fast that you can hardly react. Maureen ran to the back of the classroom and sat next to Hugo. Hugo specially reserved a seat for him. Where have you been? Hugo asked in confusion. Room of requirement. Maureen took out the Defense Against the Dark Cube textbook from his school bag and told Hugo in a low voice that the room of requirement was built by Hufflepuff. What? The room of requirement was built by Hufflepuff. Hugo sounded shocked, but I thought the Hufflepuff common room was underground, and I thought the Hufflepuff Chamber of Secrets should also be underground. Come on, the entrance to Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets is still in the girls' bathroom on the second floor. Lily said beside her, it doesn't matter where it is, the point is, how could it be? The room of requirement was built by Hufflepuff, and I'm afraid not many people in the school know about this. It seems that her guess is correct. The stone arch really hides the inheritance of the 4 founders. Lily was eager to try. She always wanted to learn the adventurous spirit of her parents. Maureen didn't tell them what the 2 stone arches meant, but he told Lily about her ancestors. Hugo sneered secretly, Lily, you have no chance, even if you find the inheritance of Gryffindor. You already know that you are the descendant of one of the 3 brothers, right? Even if Gryffindor has an inheritance, it will not be passed on to you. Shut up, that's not necessarily true. My father once pulled out the sword from Gryffindor's hat. Lily said disapprovingly. You 2 stop arguing and do me a favor. Do you know any wizards with special abilities? Maureen asked. Hufflepuff gave him a hint and asked him to find the whereabouts of the black cube based on these special abilities, but Maureen didn't know much about these things. Hugo and Lily both came from different backgrounds and might be able to help. Hugo looked up at Professor Francis, who was waving his wand to turn a chair into the appearance of Zorro the Falcon, and then explained to everyone what was so powerful about the 4 pairs of wings of Zorro the Falcon and what magic the claws had. Seeing that Professor Francis didn't pay attention to them, Hugo whispered again, what exactly is it? Parcel Twang, Principal Dumbledore is a Phoenix Master who can communicate with a Phoenix, born with legitimacy, and what else, what can you think of? Maureen didn't tell the story of Sweden and ran. He thought that it would be better not to talk about such things if possible. Let me think about it, does Metamorphmagus count? Teddy doesn't need Polyjuice Potion and can change his appearance at will. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Although there are few Metamorphmagus, it doesn't mean they are rare. As far as I know, there are at least 5 Metamorphmagus in the Auror Department of the Ministry of Magic. Lily reminded beside her. So many? How can that be considered few? Hugo said in surprise. Less is relatively speaking. Lily said unhappily, when the Aurors recruit wizards, they usually give priority to Metamorphmagus. They specifically select Metamorphmagus because they have advantages when performing tasks, so there are more of them among the Aurors. Go to other departments of the Ministry of Magic and see which department still has Metamorphmagus. Maureen took out the parchment with 12 patterns and wrote Metamorphmagus on it. He originally wanted to write Healmagus, but considering that Nran was already a special Healmagus, there shouldn't be another one. Dragon Whisperer counts? There were wizards who could communicate with dragons in the past, but I don't know if there are any now. Lily guessed. It's also a special ability. Maureen also wrote this down. After all, Headmaster Dumbledore could communicate with a phoenix, so there must be someone who can communicate with a fire dragon naturally. Hugo talked freely, that's much easier. If you can communicate with unicorns, if you're looking for the descendants of Gryffindor and Ravenclaw, maybe you can start with wizards who can communicate with lions and eagles. Why do you take it for granted? Hufflepuff's special ability is legitimacy. Lily retorted. Who knows if it is? That's enough, you 3. Professor Francis had stood in front of the 3 of them without knowing when, staring at them with a look of looking at death, making the 3 of them shudder involuntarily. Hugo shrank his neck in fear, and Maureen hurriedly wanted to hide the parchment, but it was too late. Professor Francis waved his wand and took the parchment away. No one is allowed to be absent in my class. Professor Francis said coldly in a tone like a death announcement. I was busy and wanted to update 2 chapters, but I found that I had caught up with the 3rd chapter, so I will update it. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.